Check, check.
Whoa, good evening. We're going to call this August 6th meeting of the Board of Education to order. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, as well as the acknowledgement of tribal land. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo Zia de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. And the salute, or the acknowledgement of tribal land? We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people, and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together. Thank you very much. We are now on to approval of the agenda. If I might have a motion.
Recommend we approve the agenda.
And a second. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And please let the record show that Secretary Garcia is not in attendance at this point. On to item 2, introduction of the interpreter.
Sorry, I have a question. Do we know when Mr. Garcia, or has he called? Dude, there he is. Now
Please
we can begin.
let the record show that Secretary Garcia has arrived. Mr. Martinez.
Good afternoon, President Noble, school board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia. My name is Herman, and I will be assisting in any services of translation that is needed by the community that would like to address the Board of Education, and I'll be at the back of the room as needed for those services. Buenas tardes, Presidente Noble, miembros de la Junta Escolar y Superintendente Doctora García. Mi nombre es Germán y ayudaré con traducción de cualquier miembro de la comunidad que ocupa esos servicios. Estaré aparte atrás de la sala. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And I should say welcome back to everyone. We hope you had a nice break in July, at least from school board meetings. I know many of the folks in the district were working hard over the summer, but we are gearing up. Of course, school starts next week. So thank you all for the work you've been doing, and we look forward to a successful start of school.
There's a saying in Spanish that my mother always says to me when she sees me struggling. It goes like this: Poder es querer, y el que quiere puede. If you want it bad enough, you can achieve it. Now, before I continue, I want to thank God, my parents, siblings, and Avid family for always believing in the person I could become. I love you guys. Throughout my freshman and sophomore year, I was never the straightest student my mom and I wanted me to be. And Mom, I'm truly sorry for that. My GPA was terrible. I questioned myself many times. How is it possible to have a 1.8 GPA? I felt horrible inside, mostly because I had friends in the I had friends who would see me carrying a 3-inch binder that would tell me they admired my commitment, when in reality, it was stacks of missing assignments that I had to complete and turn in before the quarter ended. Little did I know that my life was about to change as I walked into my English class to a new teacher, Chantel Kilkenny. I still remember her sitting on a stool with a huge smile on her face. And at that moment, all I could think was, how old is she? Is she even old enough to be teaching? Yes, I was that kid. As she introduced herself, she also informed the class that her first assignment was to write an essay. I looked at her with a confused face and thought to myself, seriously? On her first day, she already hates us? I used to be Miss Caseware's headache, and probably still am. I used to get so offended when she would bring up my grades randomly. I had never had a teacher bring them up so random and offer the help to help me the way she did. She gave me advice, she was strict, and she made me cry. In a good way. I was slightly scared and definitely nervous when I saw her name appear on my schedule for my sophomore year. Miss Kilkenny, Avid 10. Miss K became someone I needed. She was there not only for me, but for my family when my mom suddenly became unemployed and our family was struggling financially. Miss K helped my family by referring clients to my mom, helping me find a job. Miss K is not only my teacher, she is also a friend when I need comfort, an advisor when I'm unsure, and someone who quickly transitioned from my crazy English teacher to my slightly crazy avid mother, to someone I know I will have in my life forever. I want to say thank you, Miss K, for never giving up and believing in me. I come from a very rich Hispanic culture rooted in Guatemala traditions, where our parents want to keep their children as close as possible. Through the AVID program, my parents have been educated that it's not bad for their children to leave for better educational opportunities. Never did I imagine having the amount of support that this amazing program has brought to me. Like I once said to two of the AVID directors when they made a visit to the school, AVID is not only a college preparatory class. AVID is so much more than that. It is on a mission to help those fallen soldiers like myself get out of the hole they've fallen in, challenge life, and be limitless. Thanks to AVID, my grades slowly started to improve, and the way I saw life was different. I learned that in life, you will go to places to find yourself, even if for some of us, finding who you want to be means staying close to home. I knew I wanted to attend college. I wasn't scared to challenge myself by taking AP classes, joining mentoring programs, and taking dual credit classes, and writing this speech. I'm thankful not only for the opportunities that this amazing program has brought to me, but for the opportunities that my friends in the AVID program have gotten as well. They're not here, but I tell them all the time to go out there, find who they're meant to be, and show the world what they're capable of doing. High school has now come to an end, and I plan to attend the Santa Fe Community College for my basics, and after hope to transfer to New Mexico State University as a New Mexico Rising Scholar on the lottery scholarship. Because of AVID, there are no challenges I can't overcome. I am limitless. Thank you.
What a beautiful speech. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you, Ms. Kay and the AVID team. You guys are amazing.
President Noble?
Yes, Board Member Carrillo.
What a perfect way to start the new year. Thank you so much for coming tonight, because throughout the year you serve as an inspiration for the rest of our kids that are climbing out of that hole. And thanks to the AVID team, because you all do just such amazing work. Thanks.
Yes, Secretary.
Madam
Garcia.
President, also just doing the comments that Board Member Carrillo said, what an excellent job you just.
Speech. Now's your time. It's a hard act to follow. Dr. Ryan, do we have anybody signed up for public forum?
President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, there is no one signed up for public comment.
Is there anyone here who wished to address the board tonight and didn't get a chance to sign up? Okay, then we'll move on. Board announcement and follow-up. And we will... Oh, I'm sorry. My goodness. There it is, right in between. It is now time for the union update, and Grace Mayer, the president of NEA Santa Fe.
Good evening. I'm Grace Mayer, NEA Santa Fe president, and our teacher at the new Milagro Middle School, soon to be open next week. We have more good news. Results are in. Student achievement growth rates are up. And I think it's significant that we acknowledge all the work and hard work of schools such as Santa Fe High that really worked to get almost to the double digits of improvement in growth in English, but that's just remarkable what we're seeing in terms of that student growth. And those are the real numbers that count because it takes one individual student from one place to another. And it's what we strive to do individually as educators, to move students from where they are to where they can be, and then ultimately, to where they want to be, so they can take that and move forward. I want to congratulate our leadership, Veronica Garcia. Dr. Garcia has led this effort along with Deputy Superintendent Linda Sink, who worked very closely at Santa Fe High and other schools, but particularly at Santa Fe High to strategically try to figure out how to improve some of those scores and change instruction so that students would be more successful. Dr. Garcia is what we call an educator's superintendent. And if you're not sure what that means, Board Member Carrillo, I'm going to tell you. She gets out of the way, which means she appoints people and she lets people do their work. She trusts that educators know how to do their job, and she makes sure those obstacles are taken out so that they're successful in the classroom. I really think it's important. Another aspect of being an educator superintendent is that she can relate to all of us. Those of us in the classroom, those of us driving bus, those of us who are EAs, those of us who sweep the floors, and brings all of us up to a certain level and acknowledges the accomplishments of one or the accomplishments of many. And I think that I was very disheartened by how the one board member chose to look at some of the test scores and make assumptions that growth wasn't happening. And I think the superintendent has worked tirelessly to insist on excellence from all of us, and we continue to support her, and we hope that the school board does as well, and next time unanimously. So there's a couple things I want to discuss. NEA Santa Fe did apply for the resources for the at-risk, the community support for at-risk students. Sorry, I'm having difficulty today. And we provided the committee with our proposal for a pilot program. We didn't get a call from the committee, and we're a little disappointed that we didn't have the opportunity to share what the NEA model is for community schools, which is specific and has a lot of support from the national, and we're hoping that we can share some of those ideas and moving forward and potentially getting some resources that the state will provide to help us in establishing some community schools in Santa Fe Public Schools. I think we're in a unique position, and we have the support of our state organization, which has been very successful in developing community schools in Las Cruces and other places in New Mexico. So we're hoping that this time we didn't get a call, but next time we will. There's a little bit of concern with the opening of school and some of the school supply lists, and I'm asking that the board sort of take some for my school. And the cost of that was about $100, and she didn't even buy everything on here. So there's things like a calculator, a scientific calculator that's on there. That costs a significant amount, and I'm not really sure if those things are necessary, if these lists are updated yearly, and with the use of computers and one-on-one, like why do they need that? So I think that we need to look at these lists and see what's really required and what isn't. She also purchased 2 items for the kindergarten class, although there's over 10 on this item, on this list. And a kindergartner needs to buy a backpack and a 2-pocket folder and a pair of headphones, which cost $15.99. And they can't wear earbuds or whatever. To me, the other stuff is kind of optional, or it's brought in to share, and those are crayons and other things. And again, I just think that we need to be aware of the fact that this is a hardship, and that, we have, with the technology note or with other, working with Lionel or other people, should be in a position to maybe support the cost of that for every child that walks in. Because not only are they buying supplies, they're buying clothes and new shoes. So I understand why some of these things are on the list as an educator, because, I spend a lot of money on tissues, and I'd really like to stop. And this offsets the cost of it for the teacher. But I think everything that is something like that should be clearly marked on here that it's optional, and that we want to welcome students on day one, and we're prepared for them. They're prepared because they're there, and they're in their new shirts and their backpacks on, and their parents are blowing kisses at the drop-off. But we need to say, okay, we welcome you into a classroom and a school district that's fully equipped to make sure you're successful in your education, and that starts in kindergarten. So that is that. I think that every year we, I've said this before, that educators and everybody in this field are very optimistic people. But I think one of the reasons we're optimistic is that every year we get to do it over and do it better. And even though we have challenges, some of us going into new buildings and stuff, that's exciting. It's also challenging. Some of us meeting new staff, a lot of them. That's exciting, but challenging. But I think that we're off to a good start, especially with the significant growth and scores that we received, and we'll move on from there. And that is my update.
I have a quick question.
Thank you very much. Board Member Carrillo.
Ms. Mayor, so you said, was it kinder and first grade, they need to bring headphones?
Yes.
Okay,
That they're going to be using and they can't be the earbuds or whatever.
right.
So they can't, those are there's 3 items that are things that the student needs that only they're going to use. And then the other things like crayons and other things, they become the classroom stuff. And so between a backpack and, she told me she didn't buy the highest level, but she didn't buy the lowest either. That cost $38 because the
No, I understand.
backpack and the.
But, I would say, did anybody on this board, including Dr. Garcia and Ruth, and did any of us ever have to bring headphones to school for kinder and first grade? And then I would just ask, what are they used for?
Well, I want to clarify something, because if we may, we usually don't get into a dialogue in public or in this part of the agenda.
Well, it was a question, I'm just,
But I do want to clarify something, because I missed the first part, Ms. Mayor. Was that for all kindergartners, or was that at one school?
That's at one school. So
So I need to know what school it is, and was that a particular teacher? The same thing for the 8th grade. I will have the supervisors ask the principals for all their supply lists, because it might have been a rogue somebody that thought it was a good idea that maybe doesn't know we have ETN, and that we have the headphones for the kids that go with the Chromebooks or with, any number of things. So
Right.
we just need to find out. We may have a new staff person that's uninformed, because basic supplies, particularly like reams of paper, parents shouldn't be buying reams of paper. And paper towels, we provide those. So if somebody's going above and beyond, I think we need to know that.
Well, they're on, yeah.
And so we'll do that. I'll have the supervisors follow up when we do our board debrief, to follow up with the principals. And sorry, principals, but we're going to be collecting your supply list and make sure that we don't have something weird going on.
Well, and I brought that up not to really be a criticism, but to sort of overview our systems and to try to say, okay, maybe this is an outdated list, maybe right, maybe it's a few people that, or a few different sites that haven't gotten the word that these are the things that are essential and these aren't. But I was mostly looking at, as someone from a large family too, I mean, even if you're a middle-class person, if you have 4 kids, you're not spending $400. You're just not. And it, you know, and kids get excited about buying new supplies and things. But, you know, when their parents can't provide it, we don't want to put them in a position that, you know, they feel bad about coming to school. Their first impression should be joyous, especially for a kindergartner, you know. And I know we have resources to get, you know, and we have this person who's donating happens to be a retired teacher, and we do have people that donate to the schools those materials for the kids that don't have them. But I just think that we need to look at how we're doing this so that we embrace our kids and make sure that these material things are not an obstacle to any learning.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor. I really appreciate this as actually a widespread and maybe something that we can look at systemically, because, and I know there are back-to-school drives. Communities and Schools is doing an active one now, and I think other organizations are doing them, and it's good stuff, but it is, and I never can find this stuff on the list because everything's sold out. But I think it would be a really interesting thing to think about as really a more community support and what kids needs, because those lists are sometimes very extensive. Anyway, I appreciate always when somebody brings up something we should look at and maybe think about more as a community and have an approach for. And I do think school supply lists are kind of wild, and it sounds like, Dr. Garcia, you have a plan.
We have a plan.
Okay. Moving on to board announcement and follow-up, we will actually postpone item A, and then we will, Vice President Price, would you like to do your announcement first? Okay, Vice President Price.
I have 2 announcements. One, I was very sad this morning, and I'm still very sad. Toni Morrison died last night. Those of you who have never read anything of hers, do yourself a favor and do that. And I think the best book she ever wrote was Song of Solomon. And she should have gotten the Pulitzer Prize for that, and she didn't. I'm really annoyed. But anyhow, nobody listens to me. They didn't call me. And I was going to bring some words of hers, and I probably will wait until the next school board meeting and share that with you. As a retired educator, I taught Beloved at both Capitol and Santa Fe High. Excellent book, terrible movie. Editorial aside. Anyway, that was very sad. And because of the news, it brings me to my second presentation. She got very little notice in the news today. And so I hope that changes. The woman was incredible and made a difference in my life. And I hope those of you who have read her, that she has made a difference in yours also. Which leads me to the next announcement. I want to read in its entirety the statement that Michelle and Barack Obama made about what's going on in our country today. And I'm going to read it into the record. First, no nation on earth comes close to experiencing the frequency of mass shootings that we see in the United States. I don't know why I'm doing this without putting on my reading glasses. No other developed nation tolerates the shootings, the levels of gun violence that we do. Every time this happens, we're told that tougher gun laws won't stop all murders, that they won't stop every deranged individual from getting a weapon and shooting innocent people in public places. But the evidence shows that they can stop some killings. They can save some families from heartbreak. We are not helpless here, and until all of us stand up and insist on holding public officials accountable for changing our gun laws, these tragedies will keep happening. Second, while the motivations behind these shootings may not yet be fully known, there are indications that the El Paso shooting follows a dangerous trend. Troubled individuals who embrace racist ideologies and see themselves obligated to act violently to preserve white supremacy. Like the followers of ISIS and other foreign terrorist organizations, these individuals may act alone, but they have been radicalized by white nationalist websites that proliferate on the internet. That means that both law enforcement agencies and internet platforms need to come up with better strategies to reduce the influence of these hate groups. But just as important, all of us have to send a clarion call and behave with the values of tolerance and diversity that should be the hallmark of our democracy. We should soundly reject language coming out of the mouths of any of our leaders that feeds a climate of fear and hatred or normalizes racist sentiments. Leaders who demonize those who don't look like us or suggest that other people, including immigrants, threaten our way of life or refer to other people as subhuman or imply that America belongs to just one certain type of people. Such language isn't new. It's been at the root of most human tragedy throughout history, here in America and around the world. It is at the root of slavery and Jim Crow, the Holocaust, the genocide in Rwanda, and ethnic cleansing in the Balkans. It has no place in our politics and our public life. And it's time for the overwhelming majority of Americans of goodwill, of every race and faith and political party, to say as much, clearly and unequivocally. Thank you.
Thank you for reading that into the record. Okay, we have another announcement. This is a last-minute announcement done by someone whom I think, always consider to be at least an honorary member of this board. She is a former member of this board. She is also the representative to the New Mexico House of Representatives from the 48th District. Linda Trujillo is here wearing some of her many hats as a representative, as someone who works with the School Board Association, SBA, and she's here to present Ms. Sandra Johanna Oliva Umana, the board's nominee for the 2019 NMSBA Scholarship, with a $1,000 check. Ms. Umana is pursuing an Associates of Science in Nursing degree, and the NMSBA awarded 3 scholarships in each of its 8 regions this year for a total of 24 scholarships. But these are very competitive, and Ms. Umana did get selected to have a $1,000 check. Unfortunately, Ms. Umana is not president, and so Larry Chavez, I believe you get to do the honor of accepting on her behalf.
And
Representative.
when we found out that actually Ms. Halliday is still here, our new principal at Capitol High, so she will accept. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Marvelous. Representative Trujillo, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, and members of the audience and staff. I am really excited to be here today. When I was president of the New Mexico School Boards Association, we voted to extend the number of scholarships that would go out in each division. It used to be that there was just one, and I remember painstakingly sitting out there and being part of the committee who had to review them from our district, and we'd submit these amazing students, and we just never got chosen because there's so many districts, and anyway, we never got chosen. And so we had extra money in the School Boards Association, and the directors voted to extend it so that there would be 3 in each division. And so when I heard that Ms. Sandra had been chosen from our district, I was just so excited to be able to come here and just to say congratulations. So I'm thrilled that you're here to accept this. This is a certificate for, how do you say her last name? Umana?
I believe it's Umana.
Umana, for her. A scholarship award has been awarded for $1,000. So I have that $1,000 here. And it would be lovely if we could get a picture with everyone. This is a big event. You know, I just took my youngest son, my baby, I call him my baby. He really isn't a baby, he's 32 years old. But I just drove him across country from here to New York. He's starting law school at Columbia School of Law on August 19th. And so this is the second. Yeah, I'm really excited for him. But when we inspire our young people to go on in their education, it's expensive. And it's expensive for a family, it's expensive for the student. We know about the student debt, but the reality is that $1,000 is going to make a difference in her education. So thank you for going through the applicants and for choosing Sandra. And thank you publicly to the NMSBA for choosing her from our community to receive this award. Thank you.
And yes, we'll head down and take a quick picture. Representative Trujillo, should we
Yes.
all take a picture together?
Yes, I would like that, so we can send it to her.
That was special, says Vice President Price. Congratulations to Ms. Umana, and thank you again, Representative Trujillo, for being here and presenting that. Appreciate that. Yes, Board Member Cashman and then Board Member Carrillo.
I would just remind the public that there will be 3 board seats up for election in November, District 1, 2, and 4, and the deadline to apply at the county clerk's office is August 27th. So for members of the public, if you're interested in running for those board seats, please apply. And for District 2, which is my district, I won't be running, so hopefully we'll have a lot of candidates that compete for that seat.
And just to be clear, it's filing day, August 27th, right? It's not a deadline. You have to go that day.
No, you can go ahead of time.
I don't believe you can.
8 to 5 on that day.
Okay.
One day. It's a strange bit of democracy, but there is a filing day.
Yeah.
Okay, Board Member Carrillo, did you have an announcement?
Yes, I want to thank our athletic director and Larry Chavez. If you haven't, if you haven't gotten them already, they're at the door. These are the schedules for fall sports for Santa Fe Public Schools. So fall is volleyball, football, and also on here, and this is girls and boys, and soccer. So volleyball, football, soccer, and they've even put some cross country on here as well. But it's that time. It doesn't even matter where your kid goes to school. Get out there and support Santa Fe Public Schools teams, because it is, as I always say, so fun. And if you don't have one of these, you can get it at Max Prep online. has all of the, or the schools, has all of the information for schedules.
And I was going to announce, I mentioned it before, but Communities in Schools is one organization doing back-to-school supply drives. You can drop them off at Enterprise Bank, which is the former LA&B branches, and we are going back to school next week. So for anyone in the community who is thinking about supporting our schools, there are lots of ways to do so. This is one. I would encourage everyone out there in the community to pick something to do to support the schools, even if it's just attending an athletic event because it's fun. But that always helps, supporting PTAs, supporting Communities in Schools, Adelante, and other organizations that support our students are good ones. And this is a time of year when, in many ways, lots of us are focused on students and schools. So again, I just encourage everyone to find a little something to do and support our students and our schools. Okay. Oh, yes, Board Member Carrillo.
You know, so on that, as I recall, those days walking to school when I was a youngster.
Uphill both ways.
How long ago was it? There were cars then, so we didn't walk because there weren't cars. But I don't remember ever having huge bags. Target didn't exist then, but huge bags from Sears, or because that's when people actually shopped at a Sears, or whatever, or a Montgomery Ward, or a Save-On, or in our case, Brett's department store, whatever, right? We didn't do that. And so while I think it's and I want to commend Communities in Schools because you're doing this year, and then I heard on the radio there's these other drives that you're doing in Albuquerque and elsewhere, but I think we have to think that something is critically wrong when soap, paper towels, basics are not supplied by the district and we don't have the money because of the state. And so this is a big picture thing. I mean, I think it's really pathetic that we have to really go out there, because it's going to happen in August, right? Everyone's going to bring everything in August. Well, what happens in January? Right. And so a big picture thing maybe for us to think about long term. And for, if she's still here, Representative Trujillo, to think about when it comes to really adequately funding schools. Thanks.
Okay, we're on to Superintendent Announcements and Follow-Up. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, you should get your snacks, water, popcorn. We haven't met for over a month, so I have quite a few announcements, but I'm going to try to abbreviate them. So we had our third Leadership Institute, and this year our theme was Culture and Equity Matters and Results Count. So I have a program for you, and in there is also our beautiful student art calendar, which is just amazing. And thank you to all our art teachers. Ms. Mayer is also one of our art teachers. But a wonderful calendar. But do take time to look at the brochure, the conference agenda. We really hit culture and equity hard at this conference. And so I want to thank everyone that worked on the conference. We had sponsors, corporate sponsorships that paid for almost all of the conference this year. And it was just very professionally done, very proud of the staff, and brought those for you. Oh, are we short one? Make sure everybody gets one. So there you go. Also, back to school rally this Friday, August the 9th at Capitol High School Gym. Donuts and coffee start at 7:30. We hope to have everyone out the door by 9 a.m. Carpool if you can, for those that are listening, right? Because parking's going to be tough. And hope you will join us. It's always a spirited, fun time at the Back to School rally. I'm sorry, this Friday. Also, just congratulations. We have another PhD in our ranks. Dr. Neil Weaver is in leadership from the University of the Cumberlands, Williamsburg, Kentucky. So educational leadership. Congratulations, Dr. Weaver. Okay. Ferris Wald, Santa Fe High School, New Mexico winner of the Google Science Fair, and Santa Fe High School team winner in Virtual Science Fair. In June 1, I shared with you that Ferris, with his coach, won high school first place honors in the National 2019 GOES 1617 Virtual Science Fair, so congratulations to him. Timothy Ryer, El Dorado Community School, 3M Young Scientist Challenge State Merit winner. Timothy, a sixth grader last year, was one of 20 budding young scientists chosen as the 2019 State Merit winner for his passion for science, spirit of innovation, and effective communication skills. He was recognized for his video submission, A Solution to Help Reduce Carbon Dioxide in the Atmosphere. And so, you know, every board meeting, you know, I think I list so many students that receive national and state awards. And so, again, another example of excellence in the Santa Fe Public Schools. This evening, I will be introducing to you our new principals and assistant principals with just a brief sentence or two. So please stand and we'll hold our applause to the end so that the board can meet you. So new principal at Amy Beal, Felicia Torres. Ms. Torres is extremely knowledgeable about Amy Beal's school community. She started as a teacher there in 2010 when the school opened and has been the K-6 technology teacher, reading and math interventionist. She served as assistant principal and as interim principal for a good part of the school year. Tina Morris. Ms. Morris was named Aspen's principal, having been served as principal at Tesuque since 2016. She grew up in Clovis, worked for 17 years in the Clovis Municipal School District. She also worked in Rio Rancho and was the principal of the largest startup charter school in California. Jamie Holliday. Ms. Holliday has called Capitol High School home for the past 10 years. She has served the Jaguar community in many capacities. She is former recipient of the Teachers Who Inspire Award from Partners in Ed and has served as Mother Tongue Project Mentor for teen moms. Erica Martinez Maestas. Ms. Maestas and her family live in the Chaparral neighborhood and has a very vested interest in seeing this community thrive. During her 18 years of experience, she has served families and students in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. This past year, she was an assistant principal at El Camino Real. What? Chaparral. Randy Grillo, principal at Mandela. Mr. Grillo, rather. I always want to say Grillo, but it's Grillo. Has served as International Baccalaureate Diploma Coordinator at Mandela. He was a Spanish teacher and assistant principal. He taught at Santa Fe High for 8 years, where he served as a fierce advocate for speakers of languages other than English and was fundamental to the implementation of the New Mexico Seal of Bilingualism. Christy Foreman, principal at Nye. Ms. Foreman, whose background is in special education and administration, has been director of special ed for the district since 2018 and served as program support specialist, autism support specialist, preschool coordinator for 4 years. Prior to joining the district, she worked in Missouri with the Raytown Quality Schools. Cheryl Romero, principal. Over the course of 17 years, Ms. Romero has been teacher, assistant principal, and principal. Her instructional background ranges from kindergarten through 12th grade, and we're pleased to have her as a new principal at Tesuque. Luis Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez is a former director of curriculum and assessment at Simbra Leadership High School, project teacher at ACE Leadership High School, and project-based learning coach instructional help for Health Leadership High School in Albuquerque. Assistant Principal Melanie Colby. I didn't say Capitol High School. Assistant Principal at Capitol High School, Melanie Colby. There you are. Ms. Colby has been a professional school counselor at Capitol since 2016. Prior to that, she served in Texas school districts also as a school counselor, a principal, a special education teacher, and so on. We're pleased to have you. Fernando Morales, Assistant Principal, Cesar Chavez. Mr. Morales has served at Cesar Chavez for 12 years, most recently as a school's interventionist. He began as a second grade teacher, taught 4th grade, then assumed the K-5 technology teacher position. Michelle Ortega, Assistant Principal at El Camino Real. Ms. Ortega's experience includes teaching general math through AP Calculus and computer literacy through computer programming at Santa Fe High. She is also fluent in Spanish. Christopher Lopez, Assistant Principal at Gonzales. Mr. Lopez, a teacher at Gonzales since 2009, became Assistant Principal in 2019. Most recently, he taught 7th and 8th grade English Language Arts. He grew up in Santa Fe, and he wants to help students realize their own destiny. William Milan, Assistant Principal at Kearney. Is he here? Mr. Milan taught in Cape Town area of South Africa and in North Carolina. From 2016 to 2018, he taught at Red Rock Elementary School in Gallup. Angelique Armijo Ortiz, Assistant Principal at Ramirez Thomas. Before becoming Assistant Principal, Ms. Armijo Ortiz was taught at fourth grade at Atalaya and Amy Bill. She's also TESOL endorsed, and we're very happy to have her. And that, I hope, did I leave any principals or assistant principals out? I hope not. So let's welcome this new cadre of school leadership. At our previous board meetings, we did announce a couple of individuals, but I don't believe you got to actually meet them. So I read his resume, and our Chief Community Engagement Officer is David Carl. And so David, so that you can meet him. And was David yay, David. And was David the only one that, I don't think the staff that the board knew, so I think you were the only one from Cabinet that we introduced, but you weren't here, so welcome. So that's for our new leadership staff. And now we have,
I'll just jump in here and say welcome. Thank you for your service in advance, especially those of you that are principals and assistant principals. You are the wheels upon which it all turns at the sites, and you have to look up at the district and at your school, and it sounds like you have an incredible crop of people this year. So thank you all for coming on board or agreeing to stay with the Santa Fe Public Schools and take on new responsibilities. But that was a really exciting group of resumes to hear. So it's it looks to be a great year. Thank you.
We're very excited. Thank you
and
so much.
Congratulations, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you. We're very, very proud of them. Very quickly, Mario, are you available? And Mark? We have I think it was board member Cashman that had asked about Stop the Bleed. And we actually have purchased 40 kits, one for each school site, which will be installed as soon as they get here, which should be soon. Schools and districts across the country, unfortunately, need these kits and trauma training as part of their safety plans. I can tell you that what we have in terms of school safety is just continues to improve, and I would hold it up as a model actually for the country, quite frankly. So we have a very brief video to share with you, and I'll turn it over to our Executive Director of Security and School Safety, Mario Salvidres.
Thank you, President Noble, board members, Dr. Garcia, the Superintendent of Schools. I'm happy to show you that this is the product that we have had the opportunity to purchase. The members of the company itself, Ms. Patsy Stephen and Michael Simler, are here in case there's any questions that I may not be able to answer, but this is basically the unit we have. We're gonna show you a quick little video to show you how it works. Another item that they have in the video that you'll see is this one, a little more comprehensive. We just wanted to have it up here so you guys can see it.
Accidents, acts of violence, and medical emergencies happen everywhere. The workplace is no exception. Until now, it has been impossible to prepare every employee for every possible emergency. Even if it was, studies have shown that training is quickly forgotten, rendering the time and resources spent training ineffective. We designed the mobilized rescue system so your employees can assess, manage, and monitor emergencies according to the guidelines of the American College of Emergency Physicians, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, and the American Heart Association. And they can do this even if they don't have training. The mobilized rescue system can be mounted next to an AED, worn as a backpack by emergency response staff, or carried with you wherever you go. This way, if an emergency takes place, knowledge and equipment will be immediately on hand for bystanders who have the courage to respond. When you open the unit, the Mobilize app will auto-launch. After pressing start, it will prompt the bystander to rule out life-threatening emergencies such as severe bleeding before moving on to other medical emergencies such as seizures, cardiac arrest, overdose, or choking. The app is even equipped to triage and treat multiple victims and will prompt the user to change gloves in between patients. Once the diagnosis has been made, a planogram shows where the numbered and color-coded equipment can be located, and step-by-step instructions are given to show how to apply the equipment. Once the bystander has managed the medical emergency, the application will prompt the user to reassess the patient. When first responders arrive, the app provides a time-stamped record of the steps taken by the lay rescuer, shortening the time required to stay on scene. In addition to providing units with the knowledge and equipment necessary to save lives, we send reminders about restocking expired products and periodic app updates so that the diagnostic instructions are current with the most recent medical protocols. While organizations can't always prevent medical emergencies from taking place, they can always be ready. By using the Mobilize Rescue System, you will empower anyone in your organization to save lives.
So if I may really quick, the app that was being shown there is an app that can be downloaded to any platform on Apple, was it Android base? And it comes off the Apple Store or the Google Play. And we have right now, it's free of charge to anybody who wants to download it. We'll provide the code that's been provided by the company to go ahead and access the app and utilize it whenever an emergency exists. This will be placed in locations, school sites, similar to an AED. It's going to be in its case. So if it's needed, there's 4 packs that can be taken out of here and taken to the location it's needed. We still have 3 more in here if there's multiple victims.
And my understanding, Mr. Salvides and Assistant Superintendent Chavez, that we're also going to have them available like at athletic events, right? So
This is you're correct, Dr. Garcia, President Noble, board members, Dr. Garcia. This would be the mobile one that they can carry onto a football field or on a trip or whatever the case is, that they can go ahead and utilize. The same items that are in here are in these ones.
Secretary Garcia.
Madam President, so that basically device actually allows an individual to get some directions for the type of emergency, correct?
President Noble, board member, Dr. Garcia, that is correct. It will triage a heavy bleed, an overdose. It will ask you, for example, in an overdose, do you have access to Narcan? Which, thanks to Ms. O'Brien, we do. It will, if you say yes, it will then prompt pictures and say, which one do you have access to? Which at that point, it will help you to administer the Narcan if necessary.
Mr. President, Mr. Mario, can you actually speak to the device, or you have to press type in?
So, President Noble, board member Dr. Garcia, it's not speaking to device and it's not type, it's just selecting. It's a one button push for each screen that comes up. For example, to identify where they're bleeding, you pick that location, the app recognizes it, moves to the next screen, and then it starts prompting you what to do next.
I'm just wondering if you could actually go up to the device and say somebody has a broken arm, somebody is bleeding through there, instead of just basically trying to get to the next step, if you can just talk to it and say.
President Noble, board member Dr. Garcia, no, that's not an option right now.
And then also, is the screen actually in Spanish as well, or a different language? Or can it be? So maybe we should just think about putting it in the different types of languages that are located in our schools.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Salvides. New Mexico PED has selected the Santa Fe Public Schools for its new exciting one-year program, and this fits with the resolution that President Noble brought, and that is supporting and empowering New Mexico's early career and alternative licensure teachers in improving instruction and outcomes. Santa Fe Public Schools will provide supportive mentorship to 60 early career and alternative licensed teachers. This goes beyond the regular mentor that they get. They will have 3 days of very focused professional development, but they will have support in lesson planning, collaboration, and talking about differentiated growth of students. I mean, it goes into best practices and strategies and improving lesson design. So we were very, very fortunate that Santa Fe Public Schools, I believe, has been selected for this program. And so we're super excited to be able to support our teachers.
And just to be clear, that's funding for 60 students to have this additional support and
It's
mentorship?
for 60 teachers who are either alternative licensure or early career. And this goes beyond the mentorship that is typically provided. This is far more intense.
Wonderful.
Ms. Cashman.
Board Member Cashman.
Who will be administering the grant to make sure the teachers or
So this will come out of curriculum and instruction, and
Okay.
does one of the staff members know exactly who is, who's a coordinator for this particular one? Is that you, Ms. Rael, or? So it'll be out of curriculum instruction, and we have people who work with our new teachers and mentor, but this is a more intensive program, so we receive additional funding to provide the support.
Vanessa Angel out of curriculum and instruction, just so that it's on the video record.
And then as of July 1st, all but 3 schools, Tesuque, El Dorado, and Carlos Gilbert, have their new Conterra wide area network circuits available. We anticipate all the new Conterra circuits will be activated by the beginning of the new school year. And I look at Dr. Ryan, who looks like he's poised to say something. Are the other 3 schools on yet? No. So these circuits will provide greater than, ready for this, 10 times the speed of the circuits that they replaced at far less cost, with the monthly savings are estimated between $80,000 and $85,000 a year. The Federal E-rate program and New Mexico Public Schools Facilities Authority are funding nearly the entire cost. 90% is coming from E-rate, 10% is coming from PSA. So the savings will start to be realized now in August and September. And so that's just a great savings to the district, but also in downloading complex content, less pixelization, quicker downloading time. It's just going to really enhance our educational program.
And just to clarify, this is broadband circuits and for the internet, because not everybody might know what Conterra does, but this has been a great program. E-rate hooks up schools with fast internet, and the public schools have done very well.
President Noble, just to clarify, this is our wide area network. We have another bit out of the street for our internet connection, which is, as you said, a separate component.
Got it. Thank you. And it was just, I don't think we'd ever actually said the word internet.
Correct. Thank you.
Or wired area network, but specifying that it's not electricity circuits.
Correct. Thank you for that clarification. August 8th is a big professional development day in the district. We will be providing an exciting day of diverse professional development. It is the expectation that all teachers will participate in professional development that day. Trainings will be provided in science, mathematics, social studies, English language arts, pre-K, art, PACS, computer science. Topics include K-12 science, grade 7 and 8th and 9th grade math, high school history, K through 2 core blend elementary reading, K-2 foundations champion training, pre-K PLC, and K-12 art. So they'll either be at their school sites or throughout the district receiving their professional development on the 8th. And then a Safer New Mexico Now is coming to Back to School Bash. Following up on the board's May discussion on car safety, we have arranged for Safer New Mexico Now to distribute materials on car seat safety at the Back to School Bash. The Back to School Bash will be held on September 14th from 11:30 to 2:30 at Franklin Miles Park. And the Eco Jeep was placed.
Excuse me, could you give me that date and time again?
Right, that is Back to School Bash, September 14th, 11:30 to 2:30. I think Alma's been sending these out, and I'll have her send it again.
Okay.
And the Eco Jeep was placed on auction, and it sold. Again, this is from the Early College Opportunities High School, and this was the SEMA, Specialty Equipment Market Association, that worked with us. The vehicle featured a vented hood, trail doors, 3.5-inch suspension kit with a 5 probably 5 foot, right, stretch from rock crawler suspension and a full body repaint. And it sold for $26,000. So we were very pleased about that. That money will go back in to buy another Jeep and to do this again. So congratulations to the Eco team. And then this Thursday, we're having a Truancy Summit from 9 to noon at Nino Otero. We had a smaller one, and from that, we wanted to collaborate with more partners. And so the half-day summit will include Santa Fe Public Schools truancy leadership, including, and then representatives from CYFD, the City of Santa Fe, the District Attorney's Office, Magistrate Court, Santa Fe Teen Court, Santa Fe Police Department, Santa Fe Sheriff's Office, the District Court, and the New Mexico Public Education Department, as well as our Truancy Task Force, Opportunity Santa Fe. The goal is for better alignment and coordination of the effort to improve student attendance. And we can't teach them if they're not in the classroom. And so we're very excited about the collaboration that we've been able to pull together with all of these agencies. And we hope that we can come with 2 or 3 goals, aligned work with all of these organizations working together to improve attendance in the Santa Fe Public Schools. Just a few more and I'll be done. So we met with our legislative lobbyist, Linda Siegel, and spoke to board member President Noble, and we are suggesting and recommending, based on her recommendation, which we think is a strong one, that we have our legislative breakfast September 18th. We do it so late in the year. By then, all the interim committees have met, and we're basically, all that really gets attention now is probably the capital outlay. So she suggested September 18th from 7:30 to 9, at which point we would give them a report of what we spent the capital outlay on, what kind of money did we really get from this legislative session, the K-5 plus rollout, all of those sorts of things. She picked these dates based on their calendar, but we wanted to, hear, kind of get a nod, like you all think this is a good idea and a good date, so that we can go back to them with that. And then as we get closer to look at capital outlay, we can either tell them then, or we can always follow up with individual legislators. So perhaps in board discussion, you guys can let us know if you think this is a good idea. And then lastly, the LFC will be meeting in Red River on August the 30th. And as you remember, the Santa Fe Public Schools was one of 8 North Central districts to be audited, and they did a top-to-bottom audit from curriculum to budget. And we have not yet been given the report, and it's already August the 6th. So usually you get the report and then you get to write your comments that go into the legislative briefing. So we sent another email today to say, can we get the audit so we can respond to it? So we still haven't received it. So just an FYI, as soon as we get the report, we will share it with you. And that concludes my announcements for today. Thank you.
Secretary Garcia.
Just really quick, Mr. Superintendent, thank you for the update. Very well, very good. One of the things, probably know a little bit more about this stuff than probably Chris and I do, but from ECO to actually put a vehicle in the SEMA show. I don't know if anybody has any extra time, you might want to look up SEMA and see what the SEMA show is. It's an amazing automotive show that happens in Las Vegas every single year, and what that kind of entails is the Ford Corporation probably already has a 2022 Ford Mustang out there that they basically give to all these different individuals to basically see what they can put on there. That's the first show. When the cars come out with new wipers, wheels, lights, whatever else, it's actually for just businesses to go into that show and actually see what the new stuff's coming out on the market a year or two before it gets there. But congratulations on Chris and his team. That was very good. In regards to the truancy meeting, is there any way you can reach out to Judge Marlowe? Because I know Judge Marlowe from the district court, actually, I know she's really busy, but she does a lot. She deals a lot with those cases that go in front of her. So if we can reach out to her.
She's been invited, and she usually comes. She didn't come to our last meeting. I don't know if she RSVP'd, yes? Judge Marlowe was not there. It was Judge Cerna. So, Donita Sena. But Judge Marlowe has been invited, and we hope she comes.
Okay, we are moving on to item 8 on the agenda, the consent agenda.
Madam President, I have a couple of questions on this, just a couple of comments actually. In regards to item E, it says in the resolution that the attachment for the list of the surplus items is in there, but it's not in my packet, so just for next time, if you can put it in the packet. And then also in regards to item 8F, I'm glad to see that this school district actually did put out an RFP for that, and actually the evaluation team chose a firm that's a local firm that has worked with the district, so congratulations to the district and the evaluation team on that. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask if I may, Madam President?
Please.
Mr. Romero, I know that the resolution is attached, but do we ever list the actual property that's being disposed of? And if not, can we provide that to the board?
Superintendent Garcia, President Noble, and board members, may I take a minute to see what's inside that you're looking at?
I was just looking at item E, and it just has the resolution, and then it has the resolution language, but there's not a list of equipment attached.
Just real quick, Mr. Romero, so what happens in the resolution, it says the whereas and the third whereas, the attached list include fixed assets that are either irreparable, not economical, or can no longer be utilized by the district. So next time if you could just put the list in there.
We can send you that list. I apologize that it's not on there.
And with that, Madam Chair, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I would like to pull off F for additional discussion.
Sorry, Board Member Carrillo, what item are you wanting
F.
to pull off?
Item 8F.
Item F,
I have some questions about the community support. Just have some questions about the RFP.
Okay.
And unless we pull it off, we shouldn't be discussing it.
Okay. So is that a friendly amendment, Secretary Garcia, and with the second Vice President Price, that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of item F?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of approving what is on the consent agenda, which is items A through I, except for item F, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. I also just wanted to point out that there is an item here for $611,477 for district-wide to provide more than 8 employees for school-based nursing services to students. So some of the direction and the work that we did in the spring to really have nurses in every school just got approved in a contract there. And thank you, Ms. O'Brien, for doing that work to get that done. It's really great to see. Okay, on item F, Board Member Carrillo.
I'm just curious. So NEA I was curious as to who was going to come forward, because there was, obviously I supported the sole source and there were complications with that. And then, I don't know, I find it kind of astounding personally that NEA was the group that came forward to answer the RFP. And I see the score. So I'm curious about, just looking at this, wouldn't they have, not that I'm glad we awarded it the way we did. Why do they have a 0 for in-state preference when they in fact are in-state?
Madam President, members of the board, I asked the same question. And
Sure.
the answer to that question is you have to actually apply for in-state preference as part of procurement.
Oh, so they didn't have that as part of their app. Got it. And then, so for whatever reason, NEA has been an outspoken critic anytime we bring in somebody else, like Communities in Schools, or whether it was Citizens. Do you guys, who was on the board when we had Citizens Schools at DeVargas? Yeah, so I'm just hoping that I'm glad we've awarded it the way we did. I'm glad the way the chips fell the way they did. And I wish that all of the energy and money that probably went into doing all of this, I hope that maybe next year we don't have to go through all this. It's a 5-year? It's a 3? I didn't, okay.
Madam President, if I
Fantastic.
may I ask Ms. O'Brien, 3? Is it 3 years? Up to, so it could potentially be 4 years, dependent on availability of funds.
Okay, and right now, we're doing that at 250,000, is that correct? What's the, because the numbers aren't listed here.
They're not in the, well, I think it still has to be negotiated, but how much is the
So
award?
as a reminder, when we have a competitive procurement process, we accept the recommendation of the committee as part of our process, and then the contract comes to us at a separate time. So right now, tonight, item F is that we accept the selection committee's recommendation
Okay.
to award this to communities
No, and
and
I'm
schools.
to support that 100%. When do we expect the contract to come to us?
Ms. O'Brien?
As soon as the board would approve it, so the contract couldn't be done, of course, until the board
Right.
approved.
So the next
So it's-
board meeting, not the
Next.
study session, but the board
Got
meeting
it.
after that.
Yes.
All right, terrific. Well, I'm very glad it's communities and schools because you've proven success. And I personally believe we couldn't do without you in all of these schools. And I mean, to think that where are we going to hire all of these social workers that don't seem to want to come to New Mexico anyway, and we have this dedicated staff there. So I'll make a motion to approve on consent 8F, the
Second.
community's support for at-risk students.
I'll second it.
Okay, and I would just like to clarify for the record that a sole source is a procurement method.
Right.
And I will die on whatever hill it takes to be clear that we follow procurement law. And I do not believe it's appropriate for this board to be allocating money directly to organizations. I believe that we have to follow procurement, whether it is a sole source or a competitive bid. I believe the law would back me up on that. But just to be clear, it's not our position to support sole source or not. We need to follow procurement law and the advice of our procurement officer, which we learned at the Audit Committee we now have one. And this is an excellent organization. I think it was fairly clear to anyone paying attention to the reality on the ground that this was likely to be a contract that communities and schools would be a very competitive organization, if not the only organization that could fulfill. But you know, I just think that we need to have the clarity of what procurement is for, which is to prevent, in essence, corruption and the giving money by elected officials to favorites in any circumstances. So, again, we followed a great procurement process, we followed a clear board budgeting process, and the results of that are now coming, and I'm very pleased to support this moving forward. Board Member Cashman.
I just want to reiterate, sole source procurement is a valid method of procurement. So you can go competitive, you can go sole source. That is at the discretion of our procurement officer. So you're sort of implying sole source is not a valid method. It is a valid method.
No, absolutely. And to be clear, I thought that's how I started by saying that sole source is a procurement method and that it is not necessarily the board's to determine how something is procured. It is a procurement officer's job.
But it is the board's to submit it to the procurement officer through the superintendent if we believe it's sole source. As I understand it, the procurement officer is the one that determines whether or not this can qualify as sole source.
So to clarify, Madam President, members of the board.
Please.
Can we take a vote on this first and maybe put this in board discussion?
We've had a procurement officer
All right.
for a long time. It's not a brand-new thing. And I can't remember,
We've
Ms.
always had
Andrea
one.
Gallegos, who knows procurement very well. But the board can't determine sole source, I can't even determine sole source. And what we're really looking at is we have to make sure, the only time you can go sole source is if there is no one else that provides that service. And and you have to have like a very unique niche that there isn't anybody else even in the country that could apply for it. And so looking at it, there really isn't, I mean, we couldn't say that Communities in Schools is the only provider of community schools type work, because they're capital C, I, capital S, versus little c, little s. I mean, there's a community schools program in Las Cruces that is actually funded through, provided through NEA. So that's why we had to go competitive bid. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm not questioning any of this. To me, it's just all a given. So there's a motion, and is there a second?
Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the proposal number 1, community support for at-risk students, that basically we will enter into a contract with Communities in Schools, which will come forward at the next board meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Yes,
Madam
Dr. Garcia.
Yeah, staff just informed me that unfortunately Alma did not put those in the books, but the list of disposable or disposed of items was in your electronic packets and was on the website. But we'll make sure that that's printed for you. So if any of you want to have the printed copy, just let me know when you leave, and I'll make sure you have it.
Okay, moving swiftly along, we're on item 9, action items. Item A, first reading of new policy 547, testing drinking water at schools. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I know that we all became quite alarmed, with the news of Albuquerque Public Schools and the whole issue of districts not understanding about being able to apply through Department of Health for testing. We have already started our own testing, and we'll have those results soon in terms of lead and copper and those kinds of contaminants that can endanger our children's health. We also have applied to the Department of Health for their program, even though they didn't mention us in the article today, if you read that. And you may have seen my op-ed that I wrote around water testing, because that is important, and I think it's important for people to even be worried about that in their own homes, quite frankly. But with that said, we're bringing you a new policy because it's in our consciousness now, but you get new superintendents, life goes on, and we want to make sure that this is in the system, that water is tested at schools. So this is the first read of new policy 547. You want to come to the podium, Mr. Romero? This policy provides for the supplemental testing of water quality in school facilities to ensure that drinking water complies with federal quality standards. The source of funding for this is mill levy. We believe the cost implication is about $10,000 annually. But because while the testing is free from the Department of Health, it doesn't cover as comprehensively as what we think we need for our water testing program. And unfortunately, I don't have the one with numbers on this policy. Did that not come out for some reason? So I apologize. That we'll try to have the numbers for you next time, the line numbers. And Mr. Romero, would you like to go over this?
Actually, Board Member Carrillo, did you have a question or comment? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know there's much to go over. There's like 8 lines. I just wanted to thank the superintendent for bringing this forward and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Board Member Cashman.
So first reading, though, we still can.
Right. So I would like to make a change to this, and I'm not quite sure what the wording should be, but when the water is tested at our facility, I'm sure we have some sort of report. I would like that to be posted at each school site. So, I just think it's very transparent if we have it there, so people can say, oh, well, I was tested, and at this point in time, the water was good.
So would you be amenable, Madam President? Would you be amenable that says the superintendent shall develop regulations for the implementation of this policy, which shall include a framework and a schedule of water testing for all school sites and district facilities, comma, something to the effect, we can work on the wording, but the results will be posted at each site. Because the other thing that we're doing, the Department of Health only covers schools. It does not cover all facilities. And we believe all our employees, everyone, right, should have safe water. So that's another reason that we're going beyond Department of Health. But we can come back with language that says that site, we will have it posted, the results.
Thank you.
Vice President Price.
You know, that was my question. It wasn't clear to me when I read it because I was confused. It seemed like it was going to be schools and not all facilities.
It's all sites.
But that means even this building. That means
Correct.
everybody. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Carrillo.
So yes, I would accept that as a friendly amendment. I wouldn't do a comma. I would just do another sentence in paragraph 2 that simply
I just said
says,
we'll play with it.
and I wouldn't say necessarily posted, but available. Because, posted, it's just depending on the school site and posting things. You ever go to a restaurant and they've got like the 10 licenses they have to show, and it becomes big clutter and a pain. And so anyway, I would just say
It could
available.
be available on the website.
But so does the person who seconded?
Or made
do it?
public.
Yeah, I just want that everybody is aware that that site has been tested and what the results were. And if there's remediation, obviously we would have a remediation plan. But without posting it, it's, we'll do good at the first time, getting all of our sites, and then a year goes by and maybe we don't remember. And so this calls attention. Somebody says, you haven't tested the water at my site for the last 3 years. So I just.
Yeah, good point.
So I do want, but that will be in the AR. We
Okay.
usually try to keep the policies.
Right.
And then the administrative regulation has the framework, right, that we've worked on as to how frequently the water will be tested.
That'll be the AR then, the frequency. Got it. And just curious, what will the frequency be?
Mr. Romero?
Superintendent, board president, board members, that would be annually?
Is that like a federal standard annually, or is that something that can be done every 2 years? Just curious.
Mr. Romero?
Looking at the schedule for the Safe Drinking Water Act, they recommend annually.
Terrific. Annually it is.
Mr. Romero, was there anything you wanted to add?
Board President Noble, members, Superintendent, no.
Okay, we have a motion and a second and an amended motion. So this is our first reading. We will see the final language at the final reading. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to action item B, 2019-2020 Board Committee appointments. I will go ahead and start with my nominee for the Audit Committee, Oscar Rodriguez, who is a parent of a student in the schools, which I believe is something actually that Yolanda had reminded that this seat is often fulfilling that requirement for the Audit Committee. Yes. I'm doing board committee appointments.
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong
I know.
place.
I mean, reading an agenda is hard. We all have to get back into practice.
Sorry about that.
I skipped the union update. And I would like to request that maybe we could give a certificate to Yolanda, who is stepping off the Audit Committee and has served for many years. I'm sure it's in the record somewhere how many, but she has certainly been my appointee for the past 2 years, and I just would like to recognize all the time and energy she spent there. But Oscar Garcia is my nominee. And Secretary Garcia?
Madam Chair,
Sorry, Oscar Rodriguez, yes. And he is a finance professional with a child in the public schools.
Do you need a second?
No, I think you put forward your names first, and then the board will accept all three of those at once.
Madam President, I don't have an individual at this time for the Audit Committee.
Do you have a nominee for the CRC?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to continue to have who's done an excellent job, has been on the Audit Committee for a long time, and that's Lisa Randall, to continue on the Audit Committee.
On the CRC.
And Citizens Review Committee, yes.
And do you have a second
I
nominee
haven't-
for CRC?
Madam President, I have not yet confirmed with the second member yet.
Okay.
I mean, I know you got Lisa, but who else left from your,
This the other lady, I forget her name, Marty from.
oh, she's stepping down?
I haven't asked her if she wants to.
Oh, I see, got it.
Okay, so my appointment to the Audit Committee being Oscar Rodriguez, Secretary Garcia's appointment to the CRC being Lisa Randall. I will move that the board approve those nominations to those committees.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now should we do a presentation?
Sorry, thank you, Madam President.
Item
Members of
10, the
board.
presentation.
And actually, I was like, oh, well, I guess we just went past it. Sorry about that. Dr. Ryan has led our efforts on collecting the information and helping us manage the dashboard. This was as of what time today, the latest update, Dr. Ryan? 4:30? 4:30, 4 o'clock? So it's not really noon, it's now 4:30 this afternoon. And so with that, just know that this is a moving target. Actually, from the time that this got the snapshot at 4:30, it's probably changed again. So, Dr. Ryan.
President Noble, member of the board, and Superintendent Garcia, we start the process of school opening dashboard about the second week of July. Remember that our teachers and principals are still on leave, so getting the data in for this first week is always a challenge. We look at staffing vacancies, that's what we'll start with, and the principal checklist, which are those things that the principal is reporting back to the associate superintendents about their preparation for school and if they're ready. The facilities readiness, IT readiness, instructional materials, and then safety. So we'll go through those with the heads of the departments for each of those categories, moving us forward. The dashboard, is, as Dr. Garcia mentioned, is now a real-time document, and yes, there have been changes because I've been monitoring those. The district staff reviews this actually throughout the day. The principals and the departments have to agree on what is on the dashboard, and that's why it's a public document resource for them to be able to make sure that we believe that the schools have what they need and the schools verify that the departments have done their job. The superintendent and cabinet review this every Monday as a whole, but I can tell you that I get several calls from the superintendent and other department folks because they're monitoring in real time because we want to make sure that schools are ready. In fact, the results this year are looking even better than last year. The dashboard has two different parts. The first one is the vacancies. The vacancies just has two colors. It's green if they're fully staffed. It's red if they have any portion of 1 and up, which will then turn into red. When we get into the department checklist, there'll be 3 colors. Green meaning it's on track and ready and completed. Yellow is it's not completed yet, but there's a plan or it's scheduled to be done. So we might have a room that's had been under construction. They're going to have the tile's scheduled for Tuesday. So today it's not done, but there is a plan, an agreed upon action. And then red, it's not complete and it's not ready, or the principal has some major concerns about that. So the 3 colors will be after the vacancies. Vacancies just have the 2. And the first section, we'll start with our staffing checklist. And are you coming up on this? Yeah. Our HR department and our principals agree on what was budgeted. This isn't what I'd like to have, but this was budgeted from last spring. So if you have any questions.
President Noble, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, good evening. It's been another busy summer in human resources. We do not obviously have every position fully staffed, every school fully staffed. There has been a lot of activity with hirings, transfers, promotions. In our department, we maintain a document, a spreadsheet called the Open Positions Report. And it's essentially an Excel spreadsheet that keeps track of every movement that any of our staff members have, whether it's a transfer, a promotion, new hire. This summer, as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, we had 468 lines in our open positions report. So there's a lot of activity in the department. Every time there's a transfer, it involves making an offer, receiving a signed offer letter back, making changes in our human resources information system so that payroll is adjusted correctly, paychecks go to the right place, and all of those types of things. We've brought on 169 new hires so far this summer, and we've accommodated 159 transfers and promotions. A couple of updates on numbers that I shared with you at our June 4th meeting. At that time, I announced that we had 50 folks who had announced their retirements. There has been only one addition there, so we're at 51 retirements from the 18-19 school year. Resignations, however, jumped quite a bit more. On June 4th, I reported 76. The number now is 125. So we've had about 49 additional resignations since I last spoke to you. Applications coming in. Applicants, individual people who have applied for jobs in our district, 1,555. Most of them applying for several different positions. Total number of positions probably over 10,000, literally. Plan for the first day of school, if we do not have a chart full of green, is to go with substitutes. On Monday of last week, I was over at Santa Fe Community College with our generalists team. Generalists are the team in HR that hire substitutes. They provided training to all of the school secretaries on how to request a long-term substitute, a vacancy, to be ready for the first day of the school year. Yesterday, that was for all school secretaries. Yesterday, we had a special invitation only to new school secretaries to make sure they really understood the process. So they will work with our generalists to make sure we have substitutes hired to fill the vacant positions.
Mr. Exner?
Yes.
Can you please elaborate on the substitutes? Because last year, we had problems getting subs. Remember that the hiring was done after we did the teaching? This year, we anticipated that problem and hired the subs early. And of those, how many are retired teachers approximately, would you say? Do you have that idea?
I'm sorry.
We could probably get it, but I know that we
I could,
have
yeah.
far more retired subs than we have had in the past. And people that already principals want to hire as long-term subs.
Board Member Cashman.
So concerning long-term subs, how are we addressing the new change in the law as far as paying into retirement? So maybe some of those new long-term subs don't know that they're going to take a big hit. So how are we addressing that? I know Albuquerque Public Schools has contracted with Kelly Services, so their subs can still come back and sub. So how are we addressing that, or assuming this person's going to be long-term sub until they see their first,
So,
second
I think they
paycheck?
are aware of that change, and we have informed them, Board Member Cashman. However, I am not one to jump on that APS wagon, because I think they're going to be challenged. Because everyone else, and that's where people ran into problems with CES, that all employees, if you're due to return to work, you can either work .25, or you can't earn more than, I forget the amount. You can either work up to .25 of your FTE, and I can't remember if it's 15,000.
That's
I think
correct.
it's $15,000. The only group that was exempt, whether it's a superintendent or a diagnostician or a teacher, an aide, were substitute teachers. This change was made to shore up the fund. And I was surprised that it was very public, and I would not be surprised if that will not be allowed, because I know when that was done through CES, it was challenged and not allowed to continue. So, we can hire from Kelly if that's where we wanted to go, But I would be very hesitant to hire someone that's going to exceed that time frame, and or that they're not, that they're thinking they're not going to have to pay that in, because I don't think it's going to ride.
So maybe when we have the legislature breakfast, that's one thing we need to talk to them about. The fund shouldn't be on the backs of the employees. That's part of education, and if we're asking our employees to keep on paying more and more into it, I understand it's solvent right now, but it's not going to stay solvent. That's a state responsibility, and as a state, we need to pressure our legislators to say, this is your responsibility. So we're short teachers nationwide, so this is not anything we don't know. People are not going into education, and then to say, these people that retire, which we need them to come back to work if they can, are choosing, it's not economically feasible for them. So I just think that's maybe a discussion we need with our legislatures. And another discussion we need with them is cost of living allowance for places that cost a lot more to live. So they should have, and the military does it, and that's why we can put our folks all across the country, instead of people saying, there's no way I can go and take an assignment in New York because I can't afford. We understand that you have to add something to that piece of pay. So just another aside. Thank you.
Board Member Carrillo.
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So right now, somebody's retired, they want to come back and work part-time or even just come back, they've got to pay in the full amount into retirement fund.
So first of all, you have to stay out a year. You can work immediately, but you can only work 0.25 or up to $15,000. So you have that option. You have to either stay out a year, or if you don't, you can only work up to that small amount and not stay out a year. But when you come back, all employees, they were the only employee group that do not pay into the retirement fund.
They meaning?
And to return to work,
Oh, okay.
whether you're a superintendent, a CFO, doesn't matter. Any person that's employed under the Educational Retirement Act or the Educational Retirement Board, ERB, all return to work employees pay in, and you do not ever get that money back. You pay into retiree health care.
They don't get it back. That's the piece.
You don't get it back. And so it's sort of like you're paying to keep the fund going and to have the privilege of working. They were the only employee group that do not. That's the change.
Makes no sense whatsoever, and why would anybody come back to take that big of a hit? So, okay, so I want to understand the other part that Ms. Cashman was saying. So Albuquerque Public Schools is contracting with Kelly Services so that, to contract for substitute teachers. And what I'm hearing is if they go beyond, that it could be challenged if they go beyond 0.25. So if they end up having a contract for a permanent sub, because if we have a certain amount of vacancies, I can only imagine what vacancies they have. And so there's the question of whether or not there's possibly going to be a legal challenge to that, because it's a way, in a sense, of maybe skirting.
Well, and along with it, it's part of, and I'm looking at all my fellow retirees out there, but my understanding is that you can't even contract with a district or be a part of a contract with a district for a full year. So these people who have just retired that would go with Kelly Services, now if they've been out for more than 2 or 3 years, then they probably can do it, just like we contract through CES. But employees that retire in that first year, it says very clearly when you retire, all of us, that you have to stay out a whole year.
You have to stay out of public education in the state of New Mexico for a full year.
And that would be anything under ERB, so that would include universities,
right,
community colleges.
So what's the thinking behind that? Okay, I'll just take that as there is no thinking really behind that. Okay, then that's fine.
Probably they don't want to double dip.
you know, it ain't double dipping when we're desperate to have full-time teachers in a classroom. And what they've got to think about, what they clearly don't think about, is the work we're doing for kids or not? And if it is, then make your decision based on what's best for kids, right? I mean, that's just, to me, it stands to reason. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the legislative breakfast, because clearly in the Roundhouse, it does not stand to reason. Okay, just needed clarity on the things that Ms. Cashman was bringing up.
Good. Please continue. Thank you.
Oh, then I have a question before you go to the next slide. I'm sorry. I wrote it down. Okay, so we only have, how many employees? Like, how many employees do we have? So how on earth are there, you used the word literally. And so since you're in education, I hope you're using the word literally correctly. You said there were 10,000, you said literally, there are 10,000 positions being applied for.
No, 10,000 applications. There could be one position if 10,000 people apply for it. That's the number.
Okay.
10,000 applications.
Heard it incorrectly. Thank you.
Board Member Cashman.
And so I see the red, and like you said, we're going to hope that it all turns green. But do we have confidence that we've got offers out there that have not been accepted, or we don't have? I mean, I've heard a few people say, I can't find this type of teacher. I mean, I've given them suggestions on how to try to come up, but do we think we're going to have, you know, because it really is important to have a qualified teacher in that classroom day one. I mean, I know we have plans, but do we have a sensing that we're not going to have?
Madam President, Member Cashman, it is moving along steadily. My team is working literally 7 days a week. I was in there on Saturday. I wasn't alone. I was in there on Sunday. I wasn't alone. We brought 27 people through orientation today, 13 this morning, 14 this afternoon. So we have 27 new hires today. This evening, 5 o'clock, 4:40, when I left to come over here, there were 16 offers out on the table. So we keep our fingers crossed that we get 17 of those 16 to respond yes.
However, I do want to say something, and if you do fill them, that'll be a miracle, because I don't know any large district that is starting the school year fully staffed. I mean, it's almost, well, let's just keep aspiring, right, and have that aspirational goal. But what happened to us last year, if you recall, we got those vacancies down to a very low number, and then what happens? Openings start showing up in Albuquerque or Rio Rancho, and people want to be closer to home, and boom, we started losing people. And so that happens also, that you think you're fully staffed, and then school starts, and then they start getting recruited, and then we're competing with some of the charters, one very close to us, $5,000 signing bonus. And so they, you know, you can't compete when people have those opportunities. So I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. I know people are working really hard. We have done some things very different this year. We've had fairs here. We've done, we've always recruited out of state, but now we're also recruiting on radio, out of state and in state. We're using social media a lot more than we have. And so, and we've really boosted those efforts to recruit.
Okay, moving along on the presentation, Dr. Ryan.
Before, I just do want to thank Howard and his team, and principals
Thank
that have
you very
helped, and
much.
other directors that have helped. You know, I know the board has made HR a priority. We've made it a priority. And just really want to thank you. I know that it's been tough, and I've been relentless, so thank you for your patience. Appreciate you, Howard, and your team.
Board Member Cashman.
And I'm sorry I let him go, but we had 125 resignations. And were they for any particular type of reasons, or just 125 different reasons? Was there any trend that we saw that?
Madam President, Member Cashman, we do have an exit survey out. We did it online this year rather than manual telephone process. Data is still coming in. Our nose has been to the grindstone on getting that to turn green. We will analyze the data shortly and be able to present that to Dr. Garcia. Thank you.
President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Garcia, the second area on your report is the principals checklist. These are all the things that principals need to do. This is a growing list. There's more this year than there was last year. We're looking to make sure that kids have schedules in classrooms and teachers have data on assessment scores. They have keys and their duty schedules are set. As you can see, a lot of these that are one, well, you have to have the teachers in the school before they can get the keys. So there's a plan to get it done. It's just timing until the schools get. So you'll start to see this at the next board meeting become greener and greener as we move along. Are there any questions on the principals checklist?
Another question on principal checklist, especially at our middle schools and our high schools. Are all of our kids, or 97%, going to have a schedule so when they come in, we don't have them sitting in the library because we don't have schedules for those kids? And I know we've had that problem in the past, so have we got our handles around it?
Madam President, from the year that I got here to now, or last year, it has improved greatly. However, if kids do not register and they show up on the first day of school, they may not have a schedule. And so, but I know that that is something that we have worked very diligently on, and it has greatly improved, because I know what you're talking about. You go in and you just see lines and hordes of kids waiting for a schedule. I think that those days are gone, but there still may be some kids who may not, correct? I'm looking at some nodding heads over there.
President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, we will do a physical count of every student in every classroom starting the first day of school to make sure they're in our Power School system. They're getting our Power School system, then they're assigned to every class. So we will be checking on that daily from the first day to school on.
And the only reason I bring that up is that is one thing board members get calls about. My kids spent, the whole first day sitting outside an office. And so the other side of that, and maybe it's here, and I'm just jumping ahead, bus transportation, have our bus drivers gone the routes, and so, we're going to have the buses out on time and picking up the kids, so we don't have a call saying no bus showed up.
Madam President, one thing and Mr. Romero, you might help me with that, but that was something that I was asking Deputy Secretary Wagner about, and to Ms. Leck. This is the first year that we don't, remember how we always have a big bus driver shortage? That was greatly improved this year, and she was telling me, I think you're like pretty much 100% staffed or very close to, right? I mean, this is like a miracle, and I think a lot of it has to do with the negotiations, improving the salaries, and thank you for the board for approving those. But this has greatly changed, because if you remember, we were doing everything we could to recruit. We were having to use a lot of mechanics who have the CDL licenses to drive. And so I don't think we're having to do that this year. Big change.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. I wanted to thank also Howard for his leadership and ability to help us fill those positions. We're in a much better position than we have been previously. Superintendent and President and board members, I wanted just to address a couple of the areas that are still not completely ready, and just give you an update on those areas very quickly. Starting at the very top, we have Aspen Community School, Capitol High School, Santa Fe High School, Gonzales, and Milagro, which have construction going on. And we are working very feverishly. Our contractors are working very hard to get those sites ready to open school. There's There's no doubt that we will open school. It's just how much we can get ready for the schools to be able to open. It should be good. We're working with the principals. Daily we're visiting the sites and ensuring that the principals have what they need to open their schools on time the first day of school. And then as far as the other couple items that are down, that as you go down the list that have to do with...
Let me pause you there for a moment.
Yes.
Secretary Garcia and then Board Member Cashman.
Really quick.
Oh, go ahead. Okay. For Santa Fe High, since we're doing that construction on the admin, and I see piles and piles of dirts, where is student parking going to be when our students come back with their cars? And have we relayed some sort of robocall or something so our kids know where they're gonna park? Because right now, you can't get into that parking lot, and I doubt we're gonna be able to get into that parking lot the way they normally flow in.
Board Member Cashman, President Noble, and Superintendent, the student parking will be available for students. We met today with the leadership at the site. We've also met with our communications team, Mr. Chavez, to organize our communication plan to the students and the parents as they come in. So we have a lot of graphics and visuals we will be posting on the site to provide that kind of information and the robocalls, as you mentioned, to ensure that parents and students understand where they should go. We also will ensure that we barricade off the area that is under construction, keep students safe from that, and have a safe pathway onto the school. It's a dynamic situation with a lot going on there, but we are meeting regularly to make sure that when school opens, people know where they need to go and how to get there safely.
Secretary Garcia, or are you
Well,
continuing on?
He's gonna let me
Okay,
go on.
you go.
So, and I wanna say, Milagro, I've been over there a couple of times this summer, once Board Member Carrillo, and then once with CRC. It's looking good. You know, I know they're still tweaking and working furiously over there, but I think for the board, I'll speak for me as a board member, that was a very controversial decision to have Milagro to consolidate both middle schools. So everything we can do to make it day one, you know, that everybody is happy, that sure would help us, because at least my community was not happy with the decision I made. But I told them it was the right decision for the district, and I stand by that. But it is looking good, and so I think the science labs look awesome. I talked with our NEA rep and the art teacher over there. I think that looks good, and so there's a lot. The library looks great, so there are a lot of nice features in that. So hopefully that goes smoothly. But I drive by there all the time, and I can see everybody working hard, and so thank you because I know they're putting in long hours, so thank you for getting that school up and ready. So, and I'll be over there probably on Friday afternoon.
And Madam President, I think you've all received, so there's a 7th grade night on Friday, I think at 4, and then Monday we have 8th grade, I believe, and then the big community opening. But the kids are going to get their T-shirts, and the staff, and the whole 9 yards, and it will be very nice. We've really, the team has really been working on that to ensure that families and kids are excited and feel welcome for their grade level night, and that they're not so overwhelmed, so it won't be so big. And then we're looking forward to do you remember the date for the big community opening?
It's like the 17th, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't write it down. Is that what, do you have that, Gabe?
I did not.
The big one for the community, for the public is,
That's the
anyway,
20
I think you've been getting the
I have it here.
announcements,
the
and it's on our
26th.
website.
It's
Is
on
it
the 26th.
September?
Absolutely
And
specific.
September 26th from 4 to 6.
Yeah.
And on that point, I would say I have had a number of community members say that they've had tours of Milagro. So thank you to Mr. Romero, Ms. Yonda Wagner, Dr. Garcia, everybody who's been involved. Somehow you all have been very accessible to lots of interested community members wanting tours. And I have had a number of communications about how beautiful it is. I haven't had the opportunity to tour myself, and how impressed, just honestly, a wide variety of people are who have seen the school. So.
And to just follow on with Milagro, I'd also like to thank the board for authorizing that additional pay for our teachers, the 5 additional days, 2 days before, and then the 3 to actually move. I've heard from some teachers, they definitely appreciate that, and so I want to say thank you to the board for making that happen, so our classrooms are ready, because it's always hard to move into a new place.
Madam President, so Mr. Romero, when is that contractor off the site? Because we were told by Christy that he should already be off of the site. And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. Is he at 95%, 99%? Because what I would not like to see, once again, we were told that the contractor would be off of site by the start of school, and if he's still there another month or 2 months, then I have some questions about it, concerns about it. So if you don't know the answer, that's fine. If you can maybe get it back to me, Superintendent, if Mr. Romero, if you don't know.
Board Member Garcia, President and Superintendent, the contractor we have received occupancy and substantial completion. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's 100% complete. There will be punch lists that they will be going through, probably even after school begins, because we do learn some stuff during occupancy. So that's pretty typical. If you'd like to know precisely when he would be off-site, I think that's dependent on the punch lists and completing those.
Okay, I'll just get with the superintendent when Christy gets back. Thank you.
Mr. Romero, please continue.
Okay, thank you. The remaining items, again, about cleanliness in spaces,
I'm
bathrooms.
sorry, Mr. President. I know I haven't gone inside the school yet, but I'm sure it's a very nice school. But this is kind of a little small thing, but to me it's kind of a big thing. Is the new sign that's out there, really beautiful sign, but the trees are already covering the sign. So if we can have the architect or the contractor look at that tree that's right in front of the sign, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a brand new tree.
Board Member Carrillo.
There's no school in summer, right?
Okay, so on that specifically, and I can't remember who I mentioned it to. I don't know if I might have mentioned it to you, Dr. Garcia. When you're going north on Llano, basically the sign that says Milagro Middle School, the 2 signs, they're kind of next to each other because of the way the building's at an angle. Literally, using the word correctly, they're pretty much next to each other. Yet there is no signage coming south on Llano. So it might make sense to move one of the buildings to the side coming south so people know, what is this big building, this big, beautiful building? When you drive down Llano, you'll see it. They're next to each other, like that. Just curious.
Now I think you can continue, Mr. Romero.
Thank you. Just to wrap up quickly, the remaining items regarding cleanliness will be addressed within the next few days, as well as the bells and clocks. We'll be addressing those directly. So I think we're on very good track for some great school openings with some great projects, and we're very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to echo, I know we've sort of moved beyond this piece, but appreciation for the hard work of HR. Howard, I think, I see that there are not that many vacancies in classroom teachers in that arena. And, I know there's more work to do, and this is a fast-moving time. And I truly do believe that HR is a transitional force in an organization. So thank you for all you've done in this work. And I know the conditions are very, very difficult out there, and unfortunately maybe getting harder. as the teacher shortage intensifies. But thank you.
Just really quick, Mr. President, also, Mr. Romero, if you can just look, I did talk to the superintendent last week in regards to, I got a couple of residents that live in the Capitol High School area, as well as Counselor Abeta actually forwarded me the emails, and I guess the alarms are going off in the middle of the night, but I think the superintendent said it's due to a new upgrade of a system, so if you could just check into that, make sure they're not going off in the middle of the night. Thank you.
And this was Capitol High School?
Yes.
Yes, and actually, that's managed through safety and security.
Oh, okay.
And so that was due
Just
to
a-
an
just a-
upgrade, and I think a lot of that has been resolved, is my understanding. Correct, Mr. Romero?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Salvidas.
So I think we're on the last page, instructional materials and safety, security, readiness. Are we still departmental? IT. IT readiness, there we go.
The bottom portion is IT readiness. A lot of the ones are classroom teachers that are new. They have to have their computers paired with the printers that are going to be at the school. Of course, we've got to have them hired and get them their device and do that. So a lot of the ones will be wiped out for by the time we get to next week, because we'll have those teachers in the classroom.
Thank you. Any questions on IT readiness?
And then the final section is safety and security readiness. And
Okay, and Board Member Cashman?
So before we get to safety, instructional materials, I noticed that El Dorado is red. Is there a reason for that?
The principals plug these in, and so they may have not. They should have their materials. Ms. Wagner isn't here. Ms. Romero, do you know, or Dr. Lomax, did you want to address what might be going on at El Dorado?
President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Garcia. For the instructional materials, we have really made quite a bit of headway given the large number of materials that are adopted. Had an update that the materials that had been requested by El Dorado, just as of this afternoon, are on the way to be received by the Curriculum and Instruction Department. And so it should be, the anticipatory delivery date is prior to the start of school. And that is on consumables, that is on some consumable materials, which is not a part of the adoption that was annually undertaken this year, but it is, we're aware of that, and it should be in their hands.
So those consumables, since it's, workbooks of that, they don't have to be barcoded and labeled, correct?
Correct.
So they'd be ready to be used?
Yes.
Okay. If anything changes, could you please let me know?
Dr. Lomax, can you just say a couple words about the large adoption? What does that mean? Are we transitioning more instructional materials than usual?
President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Garcia, this was the year to adopt science materials as well as art and music, and the science materials are multifaceted. And so there are many, not only online resources, textbook resources, but manipulative resources. And based on the work of the advisory committee over the course of the year, the requests of the high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools were met to a great degree of satisfaction. So in some cases, I would say yes because of the nature of the content, but we're right on target with the delivery and trajectory of receipt of those materials.
Thank you very much, Board Member Cashman.
And just to follow up on the adoption of instructional materials, have we standardized that, or are we going to have your science curriculum. Every different school has something because our kids are mobile, and we've got a lot of curriculum out there. And I know you and I have talked about it. It needs to be standardized, not every site choosing something different because our kids move.
So, Madam President, members of the board, and we're still suffering from that because it's a different philosophical approach, right, from previous administrations. And so we get our funding every year for a particular adoption. So math, that's one of our big problems. We have hodgepodge of math materials all over the district. And the math adoption isn't until what?
This year.
This year. So hopefully we'll eventually be able to have consistent math materials and curricula. The science, yes, I think they had like maybe 2 choices or 3 choices. It depends on the grade, right, or the level.
Yes.
If it's elementary, mid, and high, we also adopted next-gen science standards. So, materials.
Yes.
So, but do you want to talk to that in terms of what the choices were?
President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Garcia, yes, for high school, all of our textbook and adopted materials, with the exception of a very small portion that is due to be received on the 8th. So, but as of today, it's not in our hands. But those materials have been received, and we heard at the beginning of the board meeting that professional development, Dr. Garcia announced our professional development strands that are happening on the 8th. So all of our science grade levels will be able to participate in the appropriate.
Dr. Lomax, just real quick. The question is, what, in terms of content, it's aligned. We don't have several series out in the district, correct?
That is correct.
So, what were the choices for elementary, middle, and high school? Do we adopt 1 or 2? What choices did they have?
Middle school is FOSS-KITS, that stands for Full Option Science Systems. Elementary school is FOSS-KITS for 3rd grades, with the expectation that starting with the 3rd grade, they'll concentrate on life sciences. K through 2 will be locally developed in line, in conjunction with the standards that will connect or intersect at 3rd grade, and 4th and 5th will then also do the same thing, planning forward. And in high school, the different content areas were in agreement that they would adopt the different types of materials that would support their content, and that is streamlined across the high schools for the content areas, say biology or chemistry. That those teachers and that committee agreed upon these elements that were adopted, and so it's uniform across the district.
Anything else on instructional materials? Thank you very much. Safety and security readiness.
Hello again. President Noble, board members, Dr. Veronica Garcia, Superintendent of Schools. This is what we have for safety and security. As you can see, the area that has the most yellow in it, or 1, is more for security guards and crossing guards. I have received a list from the security company of the guards that are going to be assigned to each school. They currently are fully staffed, but as the industry shows, they may lose some employees, but they're going to make it work. And the only one we're waiting for the full matrix is the staffing of the guards, of the crossing guards at the schools. If they're not fully staffed, myself and Mr. Mark Lewandowski will assist in the mornings and afternoons to help cross these kids safely. And I'll stand for any questions.
Board Member Cashman.
Sorry to be such an annoyance, but on rhino locks at Aspen, when do we think we'll have those in?
President Noble, board member Dr. Veronica Garcia. The only reason it has a 1, is the construction is not completed. Once the construction is completed, we already have an agreement with a local company and have already secured a purchase order to go ahead and install those the rhinoware in those classrooms. We just need the construction crew to be out of the way so that we can step in and take care of that.
So we have the rhino locks on order, or they're ready, so once the construction crew is out, we're ready to go in, or do we need to order them?
They're here in town already
Good.
with the company.
Okay, great, thank you. Good job.
Madam President, just to add on the safety and security, we do have the Run, Hide, Fight video that we made locally that's age appropriate. There's a date that's been selected when they'll be showing it during a week. The principals will be receiving a letter to send home with the parents, but we'll also be doing a robocall so that when kids go home and say, I saw a video about that, that they understand what that's about. And then also during a specific week, we will work with law enforcement. We'll let you know when we get closer to that, when they'll do the drills on the evacuation.
Off-site evacuation, yes.
Off-site evacuation. And that always creates some alarm with people, but we also can't tell the date either. So, but those will all be happening earlier in the school year. We have provided the principals with the schedule. The legislature, which I think wisely reduced the number of fire drills and then increased shelter in place and lockdown. And then we also exceeded that because we feel, just like people know what to do with the fire drill, they're not as used to what to do for a lockdown or shelter in place. So we want more practice for that. And also during non-scheduled time, people know what to do very easily when they're in class, but during a passing period or during a lunch break if something were to happen. So we also have planned into the schedule, what do we call it, non-scheduled time? Something like that. It's in other words, when you're not in the classroom.
Board Member Cashman.
I think we've done a great job on security and safety. However, with the nation being very uneasy right now about what has happened across the nation, I think if there's something that we should be doing as a board, or that you, Superintendent, have changed the philosophy, we need to hear that sooner rather than later, because I mean, our number one priority is to keep our kids safe and secure in our system and then do our learning. But I think there's a lot of, I mean, we've talked about it personally, but I just think we need to be out there in front with our community. And if there's anything that we're not doing, or you think we need to do better, or the board needs to change something, I'd prefer you to come back to us sooner rather than later so we can jump on it and make sure that, if something, we can't prevent everything, but we need to do everything reasonable so we take care of everybody, our kids and our employees.
And I thank you for that invitation, Board Member Cashman. And it's something that we discuss all the time in Cabinet and refine and refine and refine till we're probably drive Mr. Salvidas and his team crazy. We've already started getting calls because of El Paso before even school started, with people having concerns. I don't know how many calls, but we've had several.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I think we've come a long way very quickly in safety. And thank you, Dr. Garcia and Mr. Salbrides. I think you deserve a lot of credit for what we've done, and for the leadership of this board, in particular, Board Member Cashman, and always bringing it up and asking the questions and pointing us there. And I would echo what Board Member Cashman said, that as a board, I think we do want to refine this as much as we need to. And the other thing I would say is that I hope in these drills and exercises that we also build in some time in our schools to talk about these things with the kids and the staff, and to let people ask questions and that sort of thing, because I have had a lot of conversations with children, actually, just partly this weekend and yesterday and since El Paso, and it's out there, and the feeling of, we hope that our schools continue to be safe and that there are no incidents, but even the feelings of insecurity and fear are very prevalent and can interrupt learning. And anyway, I appreciate that we're making the operational adjustments that we need to, and I hope that we also just make a little space to talk about it with the kids. And if we as a board need to host any community conversations or in any way open the dours to the community and to have these conversations. You know, I would say even those sorts of things, I'm sure that we would all be happy to participate in talking about it and really just making sure that the information is out there, that the questions are answered, and that we are having this dialogue as a community because, you know, having spent a lot of time in New York City, particularly after September 11th, there was a lot of community healing that needed to happen and very clear best practices that if you see something, say something, that the best security we have is people paying attention and bringing up any issues if they see them or things out of the ordinary. So again, I just appreciate all that we're doing and hope that we also have the human side and the conversations in there too. Thank you very much.
President Noble, board members, Dr. Veronica Garcia, if I may just address one little quick thing. Aside
Please.
from the video, there's a series of questions and discussion topics that the students and the teacher will have to get the students to start thinking of how to stay safe, what they should do, how should they open doors for strangers, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a conversational piece that the teacher can have with their students so that they can start thinking about how they can stay safe in the absence of an adult. And the last thing in that is assignments. For example, during a lockdown, the teacher should assign little Johnny and little Mary, you're going to be responsible for engaging in the rhino wear. You're going to be responsible for blinds. You're going to be, those kind of things, so that the students understand the importance and buy into keeping themselves safe.
At the end of the video, I think I make a closing remark that says something to the effect that the likelihood that you will need to use this is fairly low, but it's better to be prepared. And so you'll have these practices, something to that effect, so that you are prepared. And now we just want you to enjoy being a kid and a student in the Santa Fe Public Schools and enjoy public school life. And we just end it with that positive note on there.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I would just say, I know Howard has plenty to do, but our staff as well, and the principals, because of course teachers are affected too, and other staff. Thank you. Okay, any other questions on the school dashboard? Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan.
Very thorough, really good.
Thank you, Mr. Romero, Mr. Sabrides. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you,
And
Board.
so, here's one question. We heard from Dr. Ryan that we'd be seeing this again. I would imagine we don't need the full presentation, but that we can have it just provided to us and board members can ask questions on an individual basis as needed on the school dashboard as we see it updated.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. So, I mean, I would like them to present it, but not the way they did tonight, just so... I don't want to get a piece of paper.
Okay, you feel we need to have another presentation?
Yes, but not one that goes to this extent, but where in our book we have all of the different graphs or the different, and then we can, I mean, we'll whiz through it, because then we might have questions as to why is this now higher and this now lower, and as opposed to burdening the superintendent with all of us calling about individual questions, I think it's better, and also for the public and transparency, it's better for all of us to do it together.
Okay, I'm all right with that. It's as long as Dr. Garcia has no objections, and I would just ask that we all exercise some discipline in working
We'll present it on
through
the 20th.
that. All right, thank you. Okay, board discussion and possible action. Moving November 5th board meeting to November 6th. I'm sure Dr. Garcia can tell me why I have this. Because it's election day.
It's election day, and we've been asked by the county to close schools and close the...
Any objections to that? I mean, really, it's for our advanced planning calendar that we will be having a board meeting on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday because it's election night. Okay, moving swiftly along.
Yes, I have.
Okay, go ahead, Vice President.
Why would that affect the school board meeting? Why would we have to? The schools I can understand, but I don't understand why we would.
The polls close at 7.
But we have been here during elections before.
It's up to the pleasure of the board. This was something that you guys brought up but if you are going to vote on it, because it is possible action, it'd be nice if you guys would vote one way or the other. I think it was election night. I don't know if we have 3 board spots open. I don't know if people want to be at the board meeting on that night. I don't know about parking, how many people will be coming late to vote.
The thing to consider also when I understand what you're saying, Ms. Price, and that when usually we do move it. We didn't last time because the people that were running again were unopposed. It's not as if we were waiting for election results. This time we have 3 seats up and city council and I mean, it's just like.
I see it.
Cool.
Okay, so, and what I heard from Dr. Garcia is is there a motion to move the November 5th meeting?
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move the meeting to the 6th and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B.
So procedural
Yes,
question.
Board
We
Member
don't have
Correa.
to do votes on stuff like that. I mean, it says possible action, but there are times when we just
I understand, but I heard from
Okay.
Dr. Garcia that she would prefer that we did.
want to vote on that one. Okay.
Yes,
Because
and
sometimes it's just a head nod and.
sometimes it is, and sometimes it takes more time to talk about it afterwards. It's
right.
fairly simple
Cool.
to
Whatever.
just take a vote.
All right.
Okay, and then the record is very, very clear that the board unanimously moved the meeting and that there was no ambiguity, not head nodding, in the name of transparency. Item B, there's a name change to Santa Fe High School baseball field.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to
Secretary
table,
Garcia.
Madam President, I'd like to table this. I need to get some more information on it. That's okay?
And
So what was the last part what you said?
I wanted to table, just due to.
Table. He is
time.
saying we table this. In other words, postpone the item.
And I would like
No,
to just
I know what
pass
table
this out
means.
so that
I have a
you all
question for
have.
Dr.
No, I was
Garcia, though.
enunciating because that is partly the opposite
Well, I
of
have a
what
question
Rudy
for
does.
Mr. Garcia. Who's the proposed new person? You don't have to disclose it now if you don't want to. But I'm curious as to who the new name would be. Or if you found like, GE is going to sponsor the field. Or.
Let's just table this.
That's fine. Okay. Just curious.
Okay, and Dr. Garcia has passed out the board policy 526 for naming of school facilities, which we can all review
They got to be dead, right?
later tonight.
That's the main thing. Okay. I got this.
Nobody living. Item C,
So item
suicide
C.
prevention. Board Member Carrillo.
On this one. So, over the summer, we learned of another student who it wasn't followed up on in the paper, but I know that it was an issue as to whether or not it was the young person taking their own life. And it would seem, I've lived here for 28 years, but it would seem like in the last 4 years, that for a community our size, there has been an inordinate number of young people taking their own lives. And I would like to see what the boards thought or the superintendents thought, and I'm so glad you're here, Sue, around having a task force in the wellness department specific to teen suicide with the idea thematically maybe of not an option. Taking your own life is simply not an option. And I know that sounds like a trite way of saying like just say no, but something to address this, because for even a state our size, but a community our size, to have this many young people take their lives is very disconcerting.
Excuse me. Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, we actually have had a task force with a small number of people, but working in our department to actually revamp our suicide prevention protocol this summer. So we're going to be rolling that out. Along with that, we have a training video, so we've been in contact with those folks that create the Columbia Screener. So even our partnering agencies use that at a more extensive level when kids go in for a same day. So absolutely, it's absolutely disheartening. I think really trying to figure out what is at the root of what is going on for these kiddos, whether it's experiential or it's, issues going on, social emotional issues for them. It just, for me, it rings true about how important it is for us to do our prevention curriculum in our schools, our health curriculum in our schools, and then being able to be really vigilant in watching those students. So our counselors are actually going to be trained on all of this. There's not so much in terms of our response to, but how we actually even connect with kids. We are just implementing the Sandy Hook Promise, so we're just in the beginning stages of that. But something that I think our school district should be extremely proud of, because not many districts have it, is that all of our schools have mental health services. So we have school-based mental health services in all of our schools, including our high schools, for kids to be able to get that help. So connecting with the counselor or other people in the schools is so important. But our kids are, engaging in pretty risky behavior. And so training on Narcan, which I know is a pleasure of the board, we're working in that direction, working with the Santa Fe Mountain Center to make that happen, to further getting our schools equipped, to try to even, so it's education. We have even more work to do on educating kids about, engaging in the risky behaviors and how things together can really be fatal. So I'm feeling good about where we are right now, but we still have work to do, of course.
No, thank you. I'm very happy to hear that. And I would say that in the same way, and this is kind of an educational piece, I guess, not for the person who is contemplating taking their life, but in the same way, we know that even with El Paso, granted it was only 20 minutes, but posting of the manifesto, but we know that especially in school-related shootings, there's often been a number of red flags prior. And so maybe and I'm not going to, by any means, try to tell you how to do your work, because I think you're all doing an exceptional job. But a thought that I have is the see something, say something can apply to, oh my God, I'm reading this post, this person is really spiraling downward. And helping in that way, the same way we would if somebody was all of a sudden posting, a bunch of white supremacist or anti-Semitic comments on, a page.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very good point, Madam President, and we've had students actually do that and let their counselor know or their principal know, where they do try to support each other. This issue, though, in New Mexico, we have a higher suicide rate than most states.
Yes.
And it's also becomes cultural. And and you have whole communities. I remember when I was cabinet secretary, I don't know if you remember, around, I think it was Laguna and Acoma and that whole area, there were just so many suicides all happening within a 2-month or 3-month period of time. So suicide breeds suicide, and that's the concern. It's also generational. And so we have whole families that have a culture and a tradition of suicide within the families. So, there's just so many different elements to this that it is a Department of Health, I know, concern. It has been there have been task forces all around the state around this issue. But I do think that we can, when we talk about see something, say something, perhaps add to that. If you have a friend who's in trouble, being bullied, perhaps having suicidal ideation.
Absolutely.
To extend it to that.
Mm-hmm. Board member, President Noble, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. Part of the Sandy Hook Promise work is we actually have to train the students. And it's once we train the students, then we can actually go live with the actual work. So Mario, Mark, and I, there's a whole group that got originally trained. So there's a technology aspect of that because we'll get text, and there's a whole workflow that goes on. What they're expecting is, they said, Sue, expect a lot of calls or a lot of text, just in people reporting what they're concerned about. So I'm anticipating a pretty high rate of response. But so our goal is to train our students so that they know how to actually report. So I'm really excited about that piece.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Board Member Cashman.
And usually I try not to get political when I'm up here, but I do want to call out that mental illness is an illness. We do not criminalize illnesses. And so I think we need to let our kids know that in our community. It is an illness. You need help. You're not a criminal. And it appalls me that we take one hand saying it's an illness and then you're going to get the death penalty. I don't know of any other illness that we say you're going to be put to death. So we need to tell our kids, no matter what you're hearing out there, a lot of it is false choices and false information. If you have an illness, just like if I have a hangnail. I go to the doctor to help me. And so if I'm having problems, there's nothing to be ashamed of to ask for help. And we have to treat it as an illness and try to avoid all of this stuff that's out there that clearly is blatantly false and inaccurate and is making everybody crazy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item D, board presentation.
So, D, I think it's when somebody wants to present to the board, because I know, and Ms. Noble and I talked about this when NDI wanted to come, and there was all this rigmarole, if you will. But I think the bigger issue, and I think it's time, because we haven't done it in a long time, had a meeting, not a retreat, but a meeting, and it could even be, it should be a study session, so it's open to the public, and not something where we're kind of hiding away, on board norms. Because I know that, we had 3+ board members that wanted to have, a presentation, and then it was, for whatever reason, eliminated, even though there were 3 board members that wanted it. And then I had asked for something to be, I felt it was necessary, given my experience over the 8 years, to have something in exec session. And I know that I sent it's just around the different norms we have, like what's on board discussion, what goes on board discussion, what goes on board board announcements. Just getting clarity on that, because we've never done that, the 5 of us. And so I think it might be a good idea to have a meeting on board norms. And if it's specific to presentations, for me anyway, reminding the board that, because I know the comment was made is, what if somebody else wants to do this, and then somebody else, and it's like, well, you know what? We serve at the pleasure of the public. And if all of us or 2 or more agree that somebody should present because they're partners, then we should let them present, because we are there. They are our constituents. Anyway, so I thought it might be useful to transcend this and transcend, is that the right word? Or widen it. Thank you for nodding your head that way. Widen it to having maybe a study session, like in the next 6 weeks, that deals with board norms. Anybody have any thoughts about that? Or
Vice President Price.
I'm sorry, I'm totally confused. What is it that you really want? That was kind of muddy for me.
Okay, thank you for saying that.
Okay.
I guess one norm over the last 8 years I've been here is when 2 board members want something on the agenda, it's there. And it's there. It's not something that because the problem is, once we involve a 3rd person, then we've violated the Open Meetings Act. And that's, and which is problematic in so many ways. I understand the intent of it, but it's problematic. So that was what originally compelled me to want to put this on here. But it would seem like the bigger picture is board norms as a whole.
Vice President Price.
It has been, since I've been on the board, that the 2-person rule is for board discussion and possible action, but not for presentations. That's the way we've been functioning for the 7 years I've been on the school board.
Well, board discussion, you can put something on by yourself. You don't need 2 people for board
Yeah,
discussion.
but I'm saying for sure, if you have 2 people, we said, this is what we've been doing, but not for presentations.
And I guess this would, the very fact that we're having this discussion, I think indicates that it might be a good idea to get clarity on how we work these different things. And if it's not the pleasure of the board to do that, I'm fine with that also. But I think it would be beneficial to us as a body.
Board Member Cashman.
I guess I'm probably the most flexible board member on this area. If somebody asks me, will you second this or to bring it up to the board, I'll always tell you yes. I may not agree with you, but I'll tell you yes, because I feel we're all elected officials, and if it matters to somebody, for a public discussion, then I'm in agreement with it. Maybe what we could do on presentations, though, is, and I do agree with Board Member Carrillo on it. We have a lot of partners, and if a partner says, I'd really like to talk to the board about something, you know, so all the board understands, not, and I'm going to use Math Amigos. They have asked, and I've talked with both the superintendent and board member or President Noble about that. They're a valuable partner to us. I go to a lot of their trainings, so I think if somebody is giving us a lot of time and money and don't, you know, if they ask, can I tell the rest of the board how great I'm doing, or board, you could help us, then I want to hear from them. But maybe what we need to do is figure out all the presentations, because, you know, if you have 5 or 6 presentations a night, I think most of us, our minds just wander, except we're all here. But you know, it gets hard. It gets hard for our staff too. So maybe what we could do is, if people have ideas for board presentations, that they submit them to Board Member Noble, and then she can figure out with the superintendent how best to schedule them. You know, this is a little bit more critical, so we better hear right away, but this one, we have a little bit more luxury. That's how I feel.
That's an interesting idea on just that. However, then you're leaving out the first part of what you said, whereas if someone were to come to you, I mean, definitely they can come to Ms. Noble anytime and say, you know, we're the Sky Center. We want to tell you how our year went last year. We want to present to you our budget, how we spent our money, and how many people we've served, and all the rest. And I would say absolutely the 5 of us should hear from the Sky Center, because they're a valuable partner, and we spent a whole bunch of money getting them in their new space. And so if they came, for instance, to me, and I would just, well, Sky Center, I'd probably, you know, I could go right to President Noble, or I could say, hey, Maureen, would you be the second person to have Sky Center? And then you'd schedule them. I mean, it's not, I don't think we've ever had 5 community members or even 3 community organizations come and try to present in a night. There are not that many. But if they want to, I think we should let them.
So what I would say here is, you know, I have tried to be quite clear how I feel on presentations, which is simply that anybody can come to me as the board officer who is designated along with the superintendent to set the agenda. And I have no problem putting any community group on as a presentation. And I hope that I have been clear that just let me know. And I feel that it's important to let these community groups go, and I want to correct any misunderstandings that I did not want to hear from any community groups. What I do feel strongly about is that we manage our agendas so that they are reasonable for any given night, in large part because we do often have district staff here who have to get up early in the morning. They all work for a school district. Schools start early. And I think we need to be cognizant particularly of the impact that we have on the staff. And so I did resist a presentation being put on one particular agenda that I felt was incredibly heavy. And I don't feel it's reasonable for us to stay here until even 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I know sometimes we need to do what we need to do, but I feel very strongly about managing agendas well. And I also, just to be very clear, because this is an issue of transparency, and I believe the board norm that Vice President Price was referring to, and I don't feel we need to get into a discussion of who perceived what the board norm was at what time, because there has been, in my view, in my 2 years, some shifting sands on that. But the point of 2 board members agreeing, as I understood it, was always around action items. And then when you were board president, Board Member Carrillo, that point became somewhat moot because you established the practice, I believe, that I have continued that any single member can put a board discussion and possible action item on it. Because the point, if we're thinking about the point of the whole thing, to me, it is partly managing an agenda responsibly so that we have a reasonable meeting of reasonable length for the impact on all of us and the decisions we can make, as well as the staff and people that have to be here. And that no board member, president, or anybody else can keep items off the agenda that other board members want to discuss. I personally do not want to be a roadblock. I would not be that, but in the instance that there was someone in this office that were, I think that was the point of the board norm, is that nothing can be kept off the agenda. But I will pledge to you, all of my fellow board members, I will pledge to the public, I will pledge to the staff right now that I will not keep any item off the agenda, nor will I keep any group that is an active partner from that particularly a board member request from presenting to this board. I just ask that we continue to really work to be clear and professional and manage the length of our meetings and think actively about what is on each and every agenda so that we are keeping sort of a reasonable workload for any given meeting. And, I guess I don't feel that we need to have a discussion on board norms, particularly at the beginning of school when there's quite a lot of work to be done in the district. Again, I would say, and I appreciate Vice President Price, sort of what is it that you want? It's a good question. And I want a clear agenda with a reasonable length and to make sure that we are open and accessible, and I will be open and accessible to any presentations and any action items. And so I would just say, if there's a problem that we need to solve with how the agenda is being managed by the board president and the superintendent, that we work on solving that. But I guess at this point, I hope I have communicated how I approach this, and if there are issues, I feel like I've said again and again, and maybe it just always bears repeating, any requests for presentations, please send them, and we'll work them in. Secretary Garcia.
Looks like great. That was really simple. You all three agree, and we just ask her for the presentation. It gets on there. Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Yes.
No, not on this.
Okay, Vice President Price.
I just wanted to say, Board Member Carrillo, we have always had. I'm confused because we've always had presentations from like the Sky Center and communities in the school. So I'm troubled by what the problem is here.
You know what? I think that Ms. Noble articulated where we're going to go forward really well. So no problem.
Okay. In my view, this meeting has gone on too long. That's editorializing. We are now on item 12, advanced planning.
No, we're still on board discussion because people might have things to discuss or to put on the agenda because there's items that I
Board
want
Member Carrillo, do you have something you would want on a future board discussion? And again, I don't feel like we need to do this now, and we can, but...
So, here's what's happened over the last 2 years specifically, or 3 years. Our council has given us the idea that unless we put something on the agenda specifically in writing to discuss, we can't discuss anything. That is not the AG's decision, okay? That was, no, I don't want a whole big thing tonight. But the thing is, I should be able, like right now, to say, and this is my question to the superintendent, it doesn't need to be a discussion item, but there should be a time when we can say, hey, Dr. Garcia, since the state no longer has the A to F grading system, and that was the basis on which we were doing the lottery for many kids in our schools, what's replacing that? Great. I should be able to, in board discussion, ask that. But we've been so ingrained these last many years, even predating Ms. Noble, that, oh my God, we cannot veer out. And that's not the way, that is, I believe, a very extreme reading of the Open Meetings Act and
Okay, we have been given clear guidance on this, and that the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is that we do list what we will have substantive discussion about. If other board members feel as you do, that they have a better interpretation than our board council has had on the Open Meetings Act, we should figure out an approach to that and perhaps look at OMA and that sort of thing. You know, to me, it's been very clear by our board council, and that is, as I understand it, the intent of the Open Meetings Act and publishing an agenda is that if you're going to discuss anything in substance, you should have it on your agenda. And we have been using this section, board discussion and possible action, as a time when we can put future items on it, which, again, I see as redundant because we can do that at any given time up until the Thursday at noon before. So
I agree with you. The key word you said was in discussing something in substance, which I just want to, and this can be in the superintendent's update, what are districts doing now? Because the A to F, if you were at an F or D school, you were able to be like top of the list. So since there's no more of that, just curious as to what our plan is. So that's not we don't have to discuss that now. I'm just posing that to the superintendent. And then to the board, and a couple items to have on the next agenda so that we have time to think about it before the, I don't know, the Thursday before. And this would be if we're going to have the legislative breakfast on the 8th, 17th, whenever it was a lot sooner. I mean, I would like us as a board, everyone to be thinking about, okay, what issues, because we know the district is going to have things that Dr. Garcia and Linda Siegel have spoken about that are priorities, because this is it's a budget agenda. So things have to go on at the governor's pleasure, but if Peter and Brian are here, I mean, you know, they can do a little arm twisting, so there's something important. So I think we should maybe have that on as a board discussion item next time, and then I would like to add school supplies as a board discussion item for next time. Thank you.
Are you also asking the school grades A to F be on as either a superintendent update or board discussion item?
I'm just not board discussion, I would say superintendent update, because I would imagine all of you in the Superintendent's Association are grappling with this and probably have a strategy.
Yep, it's a valid question. Okay, those three things. Anything else for board discussion at this time? Anyone is welcome to put anything else on board discussion up until the Thursday before the board meeting at noon. And I hope we all review our agendas before we come into this room so we have time to think about things. Just a plea, review your materials. It's kind of the job. Okay. Item 12, advanced planning.
Madam President?
Yes, please.
Members of the board, on the 13th, I'd like to have a study session. It says tentative, but we will do the study session on our proficiency results, our AP results, and our plan to address student achievement, which
maybe we can encourage a more nuanced look at these than the New Mexican gave before. Sorry, I'm getting punchy.
We'll be.
This is August 13th, you're saying?
A week from tonight.
Yes.
Got it.
And that is all I have for advanced planning, Madam President.
I would also like to say that on the 20th, we could confirm that there will be an executive session. This was something Board Member Carrillo requested, that we have the pending litigation update and I believe school property as the two items on executive session, disposal of real property.
But on what, I have a question about what Dr. Garcia said.
Okay. Those two things are no longer tentative. We will be having a 5 p.m. study session on the 13th and a 4:30 p.m. executive session on the 20th.
Great.
And Board Member Carrillo, did you have a question?
Well, it was, we can, all of us, and it was, it's not easy to go through the PED website sometimes. They make it hard to get information. But you can get you can get it for the whole state and all the schools, every individual school in the state, but you can get it for the district. I can't send you stuff, but I'm sure that Dr. Garcia I can send it to her and she can send you the link that's specific to getting into all of Santa Fe Public Schools data for every school.
And we have it, and we're providing it for you.
But I mean, so they can have it in advance of the meeting.
Well, we'll have it for you, and we always have the presentations in advance of the meeting. Now, study sessions, we typically don't, but we'll have it for you on Monday. Probably by Monday afternoon, you'll have the presentation.
All right.
I can have, Ruth, can you have Alma just send them the link to the PED?
Board Member Cashman.
Just a reminder, I will not be here on the 20th, the board meeting on the 20th, and I won't be watching it on video or anything. I just won't be. I'll watch it when I come back, but I will not be here.
So don't put anything meaty on there?
Well,
this is the time to sneak stuff in.
That's right. You can put things that you know that I'm going to object to and maybe try to sway a vote, but I'm just saying I will not be here, nor will I take calls. I'm going back to Massachusetts.
But she did say she'd be watching, so.
No, I will
No,
watch
later,
it when I return.
later, yes.
When I return
I think that's
back
above
to
and beyond when she.
Same
Yeah, I'll
thing.
say.
Okay, anything else on advanced planning? I won't be able to make the audit committee on Wednesday. Sorry. Maybe you will. All right, I believe we're done. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.